Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy virtual studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is Wednesday, the epicenter of yet another incredibly busy broadcast week. It is September 24th, and wow, I don't know about you, but the fire hose in the face, it is relentless, and it has become even more relentless, it seems, over the past couple of weeks. Does anyone else in the audience today feel like there has been an absolute blitzkrieg of chaos? The news cycle ramping up already relentlessly fast, 24/7, 7 days a week, just hammered by headline after headline, all of them chaotic. And it's just crazy. It feels like we're living in this intensified simulation and things are just getting nuttier. And we're seeing a lot of this play out. We're not going to get into this very deeply today, but gold and silver metals skyrocketing through the roof right now. Some big players, big investments were all over social media, or big investors were all over social media yesterday talking about how extraordinary this most recent gold and silver rally is, hitting, I think, up close to 3,800, I think was the number. And as I mentioned, we're not going to get into this deeply today, but many are saying that this is an indication that something big is around the corner. You just get the sense that something is happening, that things are about to shift and change, and they're going to roll something out. And we always know, the chaos is designed to move us into a control grid, more control. And we saw that yesterday, WTF, you see the headline of today's show, Technofascist Trump tells the UN Assembly that he will indeed launch a global AI identification system. We're going to have Derrick, Broze, hopefully with us today on the Shannon Joy Show at the bottom of the hour for a full half hour to get his analysis. He's an expert on techno-fascism and the technocracy, among other things. And so we're going to get his insight also today. As you know, it's the crossover day with myself and Dr. Mary Talley Bowden live at 1 p.m. or a little after 1 p.m. And we're going to go over what is now, I believe, a disastrous press conference on autism from Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy Jr. We are now deep into the Tylenol wars with, pregnant, liberal, birthing humans downing bottles of Tylenol to prove that the absurdity that they launched in that press conference is indeed untrue. Tylenol coming out with a statement. It is all just a massive distraction. I call it a PR poison pill. What should have been a very sober, fact-based, evidence-based press conference laying out the dangers of the childhood vaccine schedule and their relationship to the autism epidemic in the United States of America. It now has become a circus sideshow because of the Tylenol wars, not rooted in a whole lot of science. And now, unfortunately, the left has something to mock this administration with and also distract away from what is the true driver of the childhood epidemic of autism and also all of the other A's, autoimmune disorders, allergies, autism, you name it, all of it is rooted squarely in the shots, right? But no one's talking about that. Everyone's talking about Tylenol. So, and that's just one of the stories that is just incredibly frustrating to report on these days. So we're going to be talking about that with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. She'll have full analysis on that press conference and also a lineup of 3 phenomenal guests, including Toby Rogers, who has been really great on so many issues regarding medical freedom. So that's coming up. Mary Bowden will be with us around 1 p.m. And then she will launch her show at 1:30 p.m. from 1:30 to 2:30 right here on the SJ Network. It is On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden live right here on Rumble, Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, the Died Suddenly platform, and also Mary Talley Bowden's Twitter platform as well. Tylenol is a squirrel, says Guitar Lily. I agree with you 100%. We have Guitar Lily on the live chat. Diog99, great to see you as well. Green Tea 369. Green Tea 369 has gotten multiple outreaches for money. Apparently, Turning Point USA is really capitalizing on the tragic assassination of their founder, Charlie Kirk, ramping up fundraising efforts. In fact, all over social media are images of Charlie Kirk's wife sending messages, emails, and outreach to raise money. It's insane. I don't know if I would do it if I was the grieving widow and had just lost my husband, I don't know, about a week ago. I don't know if the first thing that I would be doing every morning is getting up and asking for money 4 to 5 to 6 times a day via text message and email. But apparently that is what they're doing. I'm not going to say much about that because really this is a no-win situation, and we're going to wait and see how this plays out. A lot of strange things, though, about the Charlie Kirk assassination. And even Joe Rogan is off the reservation. I don't know if you saw these clips. We're not going to run them today. But yeah, Joe Rogan is now questioning everything. And you know that they've lost control of the narrative, that the psyop is crumbling when they roll out old Joe. Okay? So Joe is now giving oxygen and breath to what basically everyone is thinking in the United States of America, that there is so much that doesn't make sense about the so-called assassin, the shooting in general, what happened after the shooting, the tearing apart of the crime scene. I mean, there is just so much. And in an 8-minute clip that is making its way across social media, Joe Rogan is now calling into question the entire thing. He brought up the strange decoy who dropped his pants and is now in jail but cannot be interviewed. The modern-looking rifle that was apparently from World War I with no serial code. The dismantling of the rifle so that it fits in a tiny little backpack, which doesn't make any sense. How was this guy not spotted on the roof? Where was the drone footage? Was he even the shooter? Maybe he's a patsy. And it culminated with Joe Rogan saying, listen, this story is horse pucky, only he didn't use pucky, right? None of these things make any sense to me. And so now we are going to have yet another, I mean, what are we going to go back to Mandalay Bay and 9/11, the JFK shooting? I mean, all of these stories, we never get any answers. No one believes what the government is telling us, but we now delve into, I don't know, hours and hours, millions of hours of footage and discussion and analysis over these traumatic incidents that happened in the US. And so I'm just not going to do that. Everyone else will. By the way, speaking of going back and regurgitating a story that also didn't make sense, we do know that Tucker Carlson is now rolling out his 9/11 series. It's a 5-part series, the 9/11 Files. We have General Mike Flynn tweeting out yesterday that a deeper look into 9/11 is necessary. All right, this is long in coming. We need the voice of Tucker Carlson to lay out the truth on what really went down on 9/11. So now we're going to drag this into the fore. And you know, it always seems like they do this. I posted this in response to Flynn. You know, they always seem to drag up an old atrocity levered against the American people to distract us from the current atrocity that is being inflicted upon us right now. Okay, so the calls are coming from inside the House. We have President Trump standing up at the UN Assembly, doing everything he can to start World War III and maybe a nuclear war. Oh, by the way, and also promising that he will be spearheading a brand new AI identification system to combat bioweapons, right? We have that clip for you today, which we're going to roll in just a minute. But, you know, I'm convinced that this tactic, like, yes, there are conspiracies. Yes, nothing makes sense. When they attack us, we the people, when they traumatize our nation, whether it's an assassination or 9/11 or Mandalay Bay or any of the recent atrocities that have happened, and then lie to our faces in such an obvious and grotesque way, right? They set up a scenario where they can then go back and say, oh, well, this is the real story. And then we're all distracted. We're going left, we're going right, we're going up, we're going down. We're twisting ourselves into pretzels trying to figure out the magician's trick. And this is what Michael Yon so brilliantly pointed out on my show on Monday of last week. Just days. I mean, he was the first to say this is complete BS. Everything that they're telling us about the Charlie Kirk assassination is a lie. And there's a lot of weird stuff. I'm not even going to go into the widow. I'm not going to go into the widow because there is no win there. But this stuff just doesn't make sense. And rather than playing their game, rather than trying to figure out all of the ways that they lie and manipulate us, or lie to and manipulate us, we should just toss the game and focus on what they're doing. Right now, atrocities are being committed against the American people. mRNA shots are still on the market. The children are still being shot up with the CDC recommended childhood vaccine schedule. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them, will be injured and or will die this year because this government continues with these programs. And I'm sorry, so does Bobby Kennedy Jr. as the head of HHS. The blood is now on his hands. And the blood is on Donald Trump's hands as well, because they know. And we're all talking about Tylenol. It's really absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And so, as I mentioned, they always drag up the old atrocity levered against the people to distract from the current atrocity that is happening right now. And I'm convinced it's a well-conceived tactic to overwhelm and distract. Isn't it interesting that everyone knows that the COVID shots are bioweapons, yet they are still being deployed? And I would rather take a deeper look at the more recent COVID democide that happened on our watch, that we can remember, that we actually lived through, and we have evidence of that atrocity inflicted upon Americans by Trump and Biden, than get lost in the weeds on the latest 9/11 narrative. I'm not saying that what Tucker Carlson is doing is a good or bad thing. I'm not going to watch the 5-part series, frankly, because there's enough bad stuff happening right now that we need to be reporting on, that you need to know about. They are cratering our economy. Donald Trump is detonating an atom bomb on the U.S. economy. And that is evident in what is happening with gold and silver right now. And it's only getting worse. By the way, they are now trying to hide all of the economic data. I have another piece here. There's a lot. When I told you, a fire hose in my face every day, I'm not kidding. It is very difficult editorially to decide what to bring to you every day because there's just so much going on. We have a shooting in Dallas, all right, a typhoon in Asia. Trump goes to the UN and tries to start World War III, in addition to announcing the building of the bio surveillance system, identification system powered by AI, a global system, partnering with the UN, by the way. So anyone who thought that Donald Trump wasn't a techno-fascist globalist can think again. This is very obvious. He's ripping the mask off, and I have the video to prove it in just a minute. We have Jimmy Kimmel back on air, right? Mocking the whole Tylenol thing because that was handed to them on a silver platter. An absolutely absurd statement and series of statements from the president about Tylenol. And now the left has, an enormous amount of fodder to mock it, right? Meanwhile, we're not talking about the shots. And as I mentioned, the Tylenol wars are ramping up. It's just all so absurd. It is all so absurd. So we're going to look at those videos. The most important story of the day, I do believe, is Trump, the techno-fascist. They are going to move us fast into the digital control grid, and we're going to have full analysis from our friend Derrick Broze. He is an independent. He is an investigative journalist and also an expert on the technocracy. And we are going to bring him in to talk about this new development. The mask is off. But before we get to the Donald Trump tapes at the UN, I do want to thank one of our sponsors, Juvenon Blood Flow. So as you know, They are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at us in terms of our health and our wellness. We don't know what they're spraying above us. We don't know what that is doing to the soil and the food below us. They are injecting our children. They are developing new mRNA technologies, saMRNA technologies, you name it. And we all remember how the COVID shots impacted people's blood. We saw that in the Died Suddenly documentary, how people were getting the coffee grind blood and then all of the blood clots. We remember the white fibrous blood clots and then also just the regular blood clots. Your blood is so important, and many believe it is being under attack. It delivers oxygen to every organ in your body, and you need to have strong, healthy blood flow. This product on the market is phenomenal. It is Juvenon Blood Flow, and it features nitric oxide. Juvenon is a daily supplement. It is patented, and it's an amazing formula that works by boosting your body's nitric oxide levels by up to 230%. It opens up your arteries up to 62% to improve blood flow throughout your body. This means that you are getting more oxygen everywhere. So to your brain, to your heart, to your lungs, to your liver, every vital organ is being fed the oxygen that it desperately needs. And it's also delivering the nutrients to your brain, heart, and muscles, even in places that need help when you age. So it's not only great for boosting that blood flow, but it is also somewhat of an anti-aging miracle. So it is Juvenon Blood Flow. If you go to bloodflow7.com/joy, that is bloodflow7.com/joy, you will get 25% off plus free shipping, plus you can send it back if you don't like it. It is bloodflow7.com/Shannon. I'm sorry, that was the wrong URL, not /joy/Shannon. All right. This is an amazing product. It is doctor formulated, scientifically backed, and it has premium and natural ingredients and over 4,500 raving 5-star reviews. It is a game changer. So 25% off for the Joy audience. Just go to bloodflow7.com/Shannon. All right, we'll be back. No, it's Joy. It's bloodflow7.com/joy. Try them both. We'll pop up the URL in the live the live chat. But it's a great product, and you guys should definitely try it out. All right, we have Karen Carpenter 27 on the live chat as well. Mav 2022 is with us as well. We Are All Dead is with us too. And you guys look great on the live chat. We have a new chatter. Crapping on Biden. Okay. Trump was part of the lockdown. He pushed for it and told Americans that the vaccine was safe. It's true. Guitar Lily, please ask Derrick about his Freedom Cells platform. We need to know all about it. So we will certainly ask Derrick. We're going to try to get him in here right at 12:30, if at all possible, and get him started very quickly. And I will make sure to ask him that question. Guitar Lily, pop that up a little bit later in the live chat just so that I remember to ask him. We have CJP Rumble with us. Rothan Walker is making fun of me because I couldn't get my URL right for Juvenon Blood Flow. It's /joy. It's bloodflow7.com/joy. All right. Let's get to the headline today, though, because this is just beyond the pale, and it really rips the mask off. We've been telling you for quite some time that Trump is a technofascist, that he has sold his administration to the technofascists. That started with Stargate. It was really day one when he announced a $500 billion initiative and brought in technofascists like Sam Altman to come in and essentially build out a massive AI data collection and surveillance system here in the US, complete with Manhattan-sized data processing centers. And so it's a highly dystopian initiative. I don't think it's anywhere as near developed as they would like you to think it is, but they're going to go for it. And yesterday, we were proven right once again. Trump had this to say on the floor of the United Nations Assembly. He will launch a global AI identification system, apparently to combat the proliferation of bioweapons. This is what he had to say.
I'm announcing today that my administration will lead an international effort to enforce biological weapons convention, which is going to be meeting with the top leaders of the world by pioneering an AI verification system that everyone can trust. Hopefully the UN can play a constructive role, and it will also be one of the early projects under AI. Let's see how good it is, because a lot of people are saying it could be one of the great things ever, but it also can be dangerous, but it could be put to tremendous use and tremendous good, and this would be an example of that.
He actually said that on the floor of the United Nations. First of all, did anyone else notice that it looks as if he's slurring his words? He's definitely reading a teleprompter. He doesn't really even seem to understand what he's talking about. It could be, let's see how good it could be. It could be one of the greatest things. It could also be very dangerous. We're just going to have to wait and see. Well, why is he going to have to wait and see? Because he has nothing to do with it. He has sold this country, our Constitution, our land, our people, and our governing bodies to actually the lowest bidders, to the global techno-fascists. And so he has no idea what they're planning, but it is a universal, global, AI-driven verification or identification system. Now, if you're wondering, and this is to combat something scary, all right? So the proliferation of bioweapons. Now, why don't they just stop making the bioweapons? That maybe they could do that. Maybe they could stop releasing bioweapons into the general population. That might help, right? But no, they're not going to do that. First, because they're the firefighter, they're the arsonists and the firefighters. And that's how they like to set this up. They create all the problems, and then they build a massive control grid and surveillance system controlling we the people when they're the villains, right? So it's not us, it's them, but they make it about us, and then they subjugate us while they're cratering our economy. Like, it's just insane. And if you're wondering, when he talks about a verification system, everyone should have known this. We told you this. We have been ringing the alarm bell here on the Shannon Joy Show about this for years. We've been talking about this for years. This was the reason that I highly encourage that people not vote for Donald Trump to be the candidate in the 2024 election. Because not only was he the guy that locked us down and shot us up with his own bioweapon, he's also the guy who will now usher in the technocratic global surveillance state and the digital control system. Okay, he's been very blatant about that. This was actually him prior to winning that nomination in 2024. Everyone knew this, and everyone in conservative media chose not to see it except yours truly. And that's why this audience is probably the most educated and aware and knowledgeable audience in all of the United States of America, because I don't lie to you like everyone else in Conning, and I don't hide this stuff. This is what Trump had to say about the surveillance system, the AI-generated digital identification system, before he ever even won the nomination. Let's roll it.
The biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. In my administration, we will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
And so they made no bones about, maybe it was after he won the nomination, but it was certainly before we voted for him. And it's why I didn't vote for him, right? Because I don't want the techno-fascists. I don't want the surveillance system. And I don't think you guys want it either. But we can't have nice things in the United States of America because everyone is so trapped in this two-party political paradigm. Trump ran on digital ID for his first term. That is absolutely true. And in fact, much of the infrastructure that was built to roll out the digital control system and the digital surveillance system was actually being built during Trump's first administration, right? Way before Joe Biden and the horrifying lockdowns of 2020. So Trump set it up in his first term. Then Biden was used to install the most egregious portions. And now Trump is back to finish off the installation. MAV 2022. I think you're absolutely right. And yes, in terms of Tylenol, I see you, Chronozone 777. Mary Holland, president of CHD, says that Tylenol cofactor in autism, the childhood jabs are the primary cause of autism. Absolutely. The Tylenol comes into play, not to get off on a tangent, but the Tylenol comes into play because pediatricians recommended Tylenol to treat children after they were vaccinated. So the children get vaccinated, they have inflammation of the brain, encephalitis, and that's why they cry so much and they're fussy, or they develop rashes, or they develop high fevers. And those are all very common reactions from all of the childhood vaccines. The pediatricians then recommended Tylenol to treat the adverse reaction to the vaccination, and that ended up being catastrophic for millions of babies and children, resulting in death and debilitating injury. So no, it's not Tylenol. It's the shots. But again, as I mentioned, that is completely overshadowed now by the absurd discussions that we're now having about Tylenol. So most pediatricians, yeah, not all pediatricians, but most. We're going to go to a quick break. We're going to see if we can get Derrick Broze into the Joy Virtual Studio ASAP. I'm hoping that he can come a little bit early. We were going to start him at 12:45. But because I have the crossover with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, I want to get him in early. So we're going to go to a quick break, see if we can't rustle up Derrick Broze for his segment. Really want to get his thoughts on what is going down with the technocracy and the creation of the control grid in context of Trump's most recent statements. And then also other headline news. Derrick Broze was actually in Washington, D.C. for the press conference that featured dozens of Epstein victims and victims of Jeffrey Epstein's clients, right? The dirty old men who wanted to have sex with young children, the men that the children were trafficked to. Jeffrey Epstein, convicted of child sex trafficking. Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of child sex trafficking. The big question is, who were those children trafficked to? Well, we know. The FBI knows, the CIA knows, the administration knows, and they're not telling us. And so Derrick Broze has been on the fore of this issue as well. Tom Massey just got his final vote. His discharge petition now has enough votes to force a vote in the House of Representatives to move forward a bill that will require that every Epstein file is released, unredacted, right? So now word on the street is that Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is actually considering shutting down the House of Representatives so that they don't have to take that vote to bring into office his last vote. So we're going to discuss that and more. It's outrageous, absolutely outrageous. I have that all here for you. So let's go to a quick break. We will see if we can get Derrick Broze in to the Joy Virtual Studio, and we will continue with the show. Keep it right here, tuned right here on the Shannon Joy Show. Of course, our sponsors, Colonial Metals Group. I had a conversation yesterday, very well-known, very brilliant economic analyst. And the situation here in the United States of America is dire. Despite what they're saying to you about the golden economy and the golden age here in the United States of America, everyone who knows everything understands that the wheels are falling off this jalopy of an economy. And this is why every American needs a gold and silver strategy, period. End of sentence. If you have waited, if you have delayed in talking to our friends over at Colonial Metals Group because you think you have some time, please reconsider. He was telling me that, and I'm going to get into what he told me, word on the street, but the big news is he's saying within the next couple months to the next 6 to 8 months, we are going to see what he said is a disastrous crash. I mean, worse than the real estate bubble, worse than the dot-com bubble, worse than the situation after the lockdowns of 2020. And it is going to sweep away so many people who are trusting the two political parties, investing in Bitcoin and putting all of their eggs in the Wall Street basket. You need to diversify, and the smart money is going into gold and silver, whether it's through a physical purchase, which you can do at Colonial Metals Group, or moving over a portion of your 401k or your IRA into a gold and silver backed, independent, self-directed IRA. It's what I have. It is so easy to set up. I didn't have a ton of money. I had a little extra. I set up my IRA through Colonial Metals Group, and now I'm contributing a couple $100 every single month. It's part of my retirement strategy, and it helps me diversify. This is not a recommendation or financial advice for all of you, but it's what I do. And I trust the folks over at Colonial Metals Group. Please do not delay. colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, so that you can begin to learn how to diversify, how to protect your retirement and hedge against the corruption and the chaos and the economic catastrophe, which I believe is coming very quickly to the United States of America. We also love our partnership with our friends over at the Satellite Phone Store. In an emergency, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a government-inflicted pseudo-emergency, whatever it is, the more prepared you are, the better off you're going to be, and the better you're going to be able to make decisions for your family that will help you in the long term. And so Satellite Phone Store has been our one-stop shop at the Shannon Joy household for everything that we need to be prepared. Whether it is a solar panel or a generator, they have all sizes of generators that you can use in short term, long term, whether it's the Faraday collection, right? Protecting your devices from EMP, EMF, and also protecting your bodies from EMF radiation, 5G, 4G, 3G, you name it, all the Gs. They have the most extensive line of Faraday products, I think, on the market, and they are the highest quality Faraday you can get. From the blankets, the beanies, and the bags. They are always 10% off when you use the promo code JOY. So go to sat123.com/joy. That's sat123.com/joy. Always use that JOY promo code. It always works. And of course, they have the satellite phones. The best way for you to keep in touch with your loved ones when the lights go out. And as we have seen in recent news headlines, the lights are going out more and more. And as they are taxing our grid with this building of the techno digital gulag, they are using up more and more energy sources. And so many outlets you are seeing one story after another of predicted rolling brownouts, blackouts. This is coming. This is going to be a reality in the next 24 months because of the expansion of the technocracy and the data centers. And so this is when, we need to be prepared. That's why you need the satellite phones and all of these preparation materials. So sat123.com/joy. That is sat123.com/joy. Let's bring our good. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Keep it tuned right here. Just a little past 1 p.m., right around 1:15 p.m., we're going to be bringing the great Dr. Mary Talley Bowden in for a little crossover before she launches her show at 1:30 p.m. right here on the SJ Network. But first, we have our guest, Derrick Broze, is joining us today on the Shannon Joy Show to talk about Trump's announcement yesterday that, yes, he indeed is going to build the global AI-generated identification system in order to combat the proliferation of bioweapons. In addition, we also now have news that it appears Tom Massie has the final vote necessary to move forward his discharge petition to force the government to release the Epstein files. Derrick Broze was on the ground with the victims at the press conference just a couple weeks ago. He's been following this, among other things, also an expert on the technocracy. Derrick Broze, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. I'm so glad that you were able to be with us today. You guys can follow Derrick on Twitter. His handle is at dbrozelivefree, and his organization is theconscienceresistance.com. You can support him there. Derrick, so glad you could be with us today. Lots of news happening right now, right?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me back, Shannon. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I would love to first go to this new development. The Democrats have secured a one more vote. There was a special election in Arizona, and the Democrat Adelita Grijalva, I'm battering her name, but she won the special election. She has pledged to sign Tom Massie's discharge petition that would force the government to release the Epstein files. It is now being reported that Mike Johnson might shut down the House of Representatives in order to postpone her being sworn in so that she could sign on to the petition, shutting down the government. What do you make of this development? You were on the ground with the victims. I'd love to get your thoughts on where this is. Yesterday, a statue popped up in Washington, D.C. of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein holding hands. It was a pop-up art, really devastating. The American people are not buying this. Apparently, it is unsanctioned, and it popped up. It'll probably be being taken down soon. But I think it is evidence that the American people are just not buying it. The storyline, you're at the tip of the spear on this. What are your thoughts?
I think you're absolutely correct that the American people aren't buying this. And as you mentioned, I was in D.C. a couple of weeks ago for Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's press conference. They were joined by Marjorie Taylor Greene and a few other politicians, as well as a nice group of alleged survivors and victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And one thing I want to say, because there's been a lot of, I guess I'll call it blackpilling around this issue, which is understandable. You know, people who are just doubtful that anything positive can come from this. And I will say that just on the press conference issue alone, it did feel like a step in the right direction. As somebody who's been researching Jeffrey Epstein since 2016, and I produced my documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, back in 2018, the fact that we were a couple hundred feet away from the Capitol building with these politicians talking about Jeffrey Epstein, with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and all of the major corporate media, as well as independent media there, and hundreds of people protesting, that felt like some progress alone. Now, that doesn't mean the government's going to release documents that will give us any more details, but just in terms of making sure the issue hasn't died down, that felt good to be there and like, okay, we've changed the game a little bit. This is no longer a conspiracy whispered about on forums on the internet. This is front and center, and it's not going away. The unfortunate thing I would say is that the issue has become bipartisan. So during the Biden administration, you had all these different people, MAGA, Republicans, conservatives, and other freedom-minded people come, cheering for the Epstein files, release the Epstein files, including Kash Patel and others who are now in office, saying they were, if I got in office, this is what I would do. And the Democrats, for the most part, they did ignore it. They really didn't express any interest in this. And then now that the Republicans, Donald Trump is in power, you have more of the Democrats calling it out. And again, on one hand, I celebrate it. Good, people are speaking about this. But it's hard not to see how, at least for some of these people, I'm sure it's just a political, it's a political instrument that they can use to bludgeon Donald Trump. Maybe they genuinely care about the victims, but they didn't care 4 years ago. They didn't care, in the past decade. So it's kind of hard not to see, and as I said, to get frustrated by that. But nevertheless, the fact that it is being discussed, and we have to acknowledge that the Republicans are surely doing everything they can to ignore this issue and to try to block it. Just last week, the House Judiciary Committee all of the Republicans voted, except for Thomas Massie, of course, voted to block a subpoena. The Democrats were trying to subpoena 4 banks related to Jeffrey Epstein's transactions, including JP Morgan Chase, Deutsche Bank, and others. And they wanted to bring in Jamie Dimon. And that would have been really important because we still haven't got to the bottom of what these banks knew. They clearly were allowing Epstein to have accounts for years, including after he had been arrested back in the mid-2000s. And unfortunately, despite the best efforts by the Democrats in that committee, it completely failed. Every Republican, as I said, except for Thomas Massie, denied that. And that should really send a message to the American people that the people you may have voted for and who have been telling you for years they're going to get to the bottom of it are now doing a complete about face. And as you mentioned, Mike Johnson doing everything he can to block this and to deny this. So that's unfortunate that this issue is kind of, while it's mainstream and it's being talked about, it is firmly entrenched in that left-right binary that they want everybody to fall into, which I think tends to be a false binary. Because at the end of the day, for anybody who's researched not only Jeffrey Epstein, but the history of child abuse and sexual abuse, and particularly rings involving governments and intelligence agencies. For those who are not familiar, I encourage you to look up the Franklin scandal, look up my documentary on the Finders cult. You can go back to the Boys Town scandal. You can go back to the 90s and reports of prostitutes, male prostitutes going to the White House during the Clinton years and during the Bush years. This is an issue that both sides have been guilty of participating in. So this isn't, okay, it's only the Democrats that are pedophiles, or it's only the Republicans and Donald Trump that are pedophiles. There are a lot of people who would like us to get stuck in that framing and just keep playing that left-right game. But in reality, this is an issue that pervades all political parties, religions, Hollywood. We could go on and on. It's not just a one type of person or one type of religion. It is unfortunately a much bigger issue than some people would like us to believe.
We're talking to Derrick Broze. You can support him at theconscienceresistance.com. You can follow him on Twitter. His handle is at @DBrozeLiveFree. And I would recommend everyone pull up his documentaries and take a look at his reporting, because you have been one of the best, one of the most independent that we've seen. And that's why this issue, what do you think the big picture is on this Epstein scandal? Why do you think it is that the majority of Republicans and the majority of Democrats don't want to touch this issue? Or what have you been able to glean in your reporting? Oh, looks like we have a bit of a pause. We're talking to Derrick Broze. His website, theconscienceresistance.com. That is theconscienceresistance.com. And there you are. We got you right back on there. I was asking you about the big picture and why, from all of the reporting that you have done, why do you think it is that the majority of Republicans and Democrats not only stay away from this issue and refuse to acknowledge it, but in some cases actively do everything they possibly can to smash it down and to keep it under wraps? What are your thoughts on the why?
Sure. So I want to go back to that press conference for a moment in DC, which took place about 3 weeks ago. I was able to ask a question to the attorneys and to the victims with all the mainstream media there. And thankfully, I was able to ask this question because it did get picked up by other media outlets. And my question was whether or not any of the survivors or anyone who was there had any new information relating to Les Wexner. And Les Wexner is, of course, the billionaire who many people believe was the financier of Jeffrey Epstein. He gave Epstein his New York mansion reportedly for $1. Les Wexner is the founder of the Limited Brands, which is obviously the Limited Clothes, Victoria's Secret. Billionaire based in Ohio and very powerful out there. He has largely escaped the public scrutiny that I think he deserves, save for a couple of articles a few years ago where he said, I haven't known Epstein in more than a decade. He lied to me. He stole money from me. He tried to sort of totally distance himself from it. And the reason I asked that question, the reason I think this still matters, and it might be part of the answer to your question, is because Wexner, and this is not, I want to make this clear, this is not explicitly just because he's a Jewish man, but I do want to say there is something there because he was part of something called the Mega Group, which is very underreported. I encourage everybody to go search and find what you can. You can go to the Conscious Resistance and see my past reporting. But the Mega Group was an admitted, acknowledged group of wealthy Jewish financiers who were interested in protecting Israel's interests. And Les Wexner, among a few other Jewish financier billionaires, were part of this group. And I believe that it is this group, if not directly tied to Jeffrey Epstein and financing him, definitely playing a major role. And this group, of course, does have some ties to the Israeli Mossad. That's not to say that we can prove for a fact that Epstein was an Israeli asset. I know that's a popular claim out there. I don't think we can 100% prove that yet. But I do think that is a huge piece of the puzzle that has not been explored. And so why would that lead Republicans? And as I said, Democrats right now, they're talking about it, but 4 years ago they didn't. I think they're just doing it because it's politically convenient. In general, I think the reason both sides have stayed away from this issue and only talk about it when it's convenient to score political points is because there is a huge influence behind it, including the mega group and including groups linked to Zionism. And as we know, the majority of Republicans and Democrats both support Israel unquestionably and are not willing to challenge that power. Now, that might be changing in some fronts here. There's a lot of people asking questions regarding the Zionist influence, particularly in light of the recent shooting of Charlie Kirk. But I think that is a big piece of the puzzle here, that there is just too many powerful people, including some Jewish billionaires with ties to Israel, who are still out there living and alive, walking around free as can be, with connections to Jeffrey Epstein. And instead, the people who are trying to kind of keep this under wraps, they would like us to just focus on Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell obviously plays a big part of this. We've even seen Trump, of course, recently she got moved to a minimum security prison. She seems to be getting some sort of special treatment after doing her interview with Todd Blanche. But I want to remind people that when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in 2019, and then we were told he killed himself, shortly after that, another man was arrested in France. His name is Jean-Luc Brunel, who was part of the Epstein network. He is the founder of something called the M-Squared Modeling Agency. This is a hugely underexplored and underreported angle of the Epstein network, that there is what I call this fashion model to sexual abuse pipeline, where these people, including Epstein, would use modeling agencies to recruit young girls and then bring them into their network. And Jean-Luc Brunel was a part of that. He was friends with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Well, he was arrested shortly after Epstein in France, and wouldn't you know it, he allegedly killed himself in prison as well. And
wow.
So I'd like to have this covered up. As far as they're concerned, Epstein's dead, Jean-Luc Brunel's dead, Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison. And just last week, Kash Patel said Epstein trafficked no girls to anybody. He said there's no evidence that he trafficked anyone to anyone. So we're supposed to believe that it was just Epstein abusing these allegedly up to 1,000 girls by himself. It's just Maxwell and Epstein. And I think that's what people who would be exposed by these files continuing to be released and by more truth coming out, that's what they want us to focus on. It's just Epstein, it's just Maxwell. Don't ask questions about Jean-Luc Brunel. Don't ask questions about the different people like Les Wexner. Tie it all up in a nice little bow. That's it. That's the official story.
Well, and they would have to, if Jeffrey Epstein were convicted of trafficking and Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of trafficking, they would have to have trafficked the children to someone, not themselves. So this is where people are like, this makes absolutely no sense. And I agree with you. I think that there are some major power players that do not want to be exposed. Let's delve into the Lex Wexner angle. He's a mover and shaker in Ohio. You do not engage in politics in the state of Ohio unless you go through this guy. And as we now pivot to the technocracy and technofascism, it was actually Wexner that gave J.D. Vance. I believe that J.D. Vance had a fundraiser, or there was a fundraiser for J.D. Vance in his home very early on. And there are lots of connections. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein was a mover and a shaker in the tech transhumanism and data digital crowd, right? So he was very, very central to shaping discussions on science and where science would go. So there's that angle as well. Can you speak to this scandal, its relationship to the techno-fascism or the technocracy that you're also an expert on, and how that aligns? Because I think I think they really want to keep people away from J.D. Vance because he's next in line after Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump is now linked at the hip with Jeffrey Epstein. They're skipping down, we've got a statue now in Washington, D.C. that will be, that will never be forgotten. All right. So, but, even if Trump is taken out, for whatever reason, JD Vance is next in line, and Vance is all over this. What are your thoughts about that? And let's move this discussion now into the creation of the digital control grid, which we saw yesterday. Donald Trump, UN address. He's going to do it. He's going to build the AI identification system to protect us from something scary. But it's not just technofascism, it's also globalism, all wrapped up in one nice package with a bow. Can you help us move from that angle, that connection with Epstein, into the threat that is right in front of us right now?
Absolutely, and you make some really great points there. So it's 100% clear and true that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in transhumanist research, and there's been quotes from others that he knew that his goal was to try to, for just one example, save his sperm to seed the human race later. Like Epstein apparently wanted to impregnate all kinds of women with his sperm for some kind of plans they had. And he was working directly with engineers and scientists from MIT who were absolutely connected to the transhumanist agenda. And I did want to mention in terms of Wexner, and this is just for anybody out there who wants to do some deep dives. I haven't had time to fully do this yet, but I've got it here in my files right here. Les Wexner recently has been getting into AI as well. There's a company called CoreWeave, if anybody wants to look into that. He signed a massive contract with them. I think he donated up to 800 million, maybe $1 billion at this point, to this company. And I think there's something to that company and how it relates to the bigger picture of what we're seeing with Jeffrey Epstein. But in terms of Vance and that whole connection, you're 100% right that Vance is essentially the technocratic puppet. Now, from my perspective, and I think you might agree, it's not that Donald Trump is innocent and a bunch of technocrats told him to choose this guy and he has no idea, what's going on. Some people might take that view. I don't believe so. I believe Donald Trump is a active participant in what is taking place here. And it's been reported numerous places that during the 2024 election, he was told specifically by Elon Musk and David Sachs, who then he later appointed his AI and crypto czar, to choose JD Vance. It was actually at a fundraiser at David Sachs' house in San Francisco where there was different technocrats from Microsoft and from the various chip companies. And they said, yeah, JD's our man. JD's the guy to choose. And of course, we know that JD Vance, his Senate run in Ohio, was funded by Peter Thiel, and there's Wexner connections as well. And he said when he was listening to the graduation speech at Yale University, it was Peter Thiel who was speaking. He said he heard Peter speak and it changed his whole life. So there's a very strong relationship between Peter Thiel, and of course he's one of the founders of Palantir, which Palantir is getting these billion-dollar contracts for AI warfare, not only in Gaza, but elsewhere around the world. Palantir just signed a massive contract in the UK with the UK government there. So this is a company that has seen their stock price rise, I think 600% just in the last 8-9 months since Trump has come into office. And these are the people who backed JD Vance to get him into the Senate and then also to get him to the position as vice president. And just kind of a side note, I also think that it's possible that his entire narrative of who he is crafted, like we see with many of these people. Many people might not know that he wrote a book before he went to the Senate called Hillbilly Elegy. And it's like kind of the story of how he's, a Midwestern farm boy, but he's also kind of an elitist. And so he writes this book, and wouldn't you know it, it gets picked up by Netflix and turned into a movie. And my suspicion when we see things like this is that those movies are being placed there for a reason. Those books are being placed there for a reason. And it's because they want the general public to watch those movies, to read those books, and to get this narrative. Oh, this is who JD is. He's just like me. He comes from, kind of a simple background. And then he rose up and went to Yale and he had all this great thing. And now with the help of Peter Thiel, so there's a narrative that has been seeded into the minds of the public about who JD Vance is. And within a couple of years, all of a sudden he's vice president and next in line for the presidency. So whether or not Donald Trump finishes this next term, I know there's some who have suspicions about his health and things like that. Yeah. Even if he makes it all the way through, clearly JD Vance is the favored candidate to go in 2028 against whoever the Democrats put up. And I think that is because this is who the technocrats want to be their man. And we're already seeing it. I mean, you don't even have to wait for JD Vance to be president. So many things that Donald Trump is doing already are already kind of giving the technocrats full reign of really whatever they want, not only with contracts and with military, the military defense contractors, but in so many other ways. So I think that these two issues are absolutely interlinked, because the agenda of the Epstein network with Jeffrey Epstein, he was just the front man, just a face for this larger agenda, which precedes him and goes even after his alleged death.
Beyond him.
That
Right.
agenda ties into transhumanism and technocracy. And I think those are really, it's important for the public and for everybody listening to understand how technocracy and transhumanism are interlinked. One is a philosophy that says we should use technology to manage society and to create an alleged utopia. That's technocracy. And the other says that we can evolve past human 1.0 and become human 2.0 and merge with the machines in order to, according to Elon Musk, this is the only way to beat the AI and to make sure that it doesn't go bad. This is the lesson they want us to accept. Join the Borg, join the machine, and let technology and the technocrats run everything. And I think we should reject it every step we can.
How far do you think, and Derrick, you're brilliant. Thank you so much for being with us today. The live chat is so thankful for you and your journalism and your independent spirit and your amazing investigative work. You are a treasure, and an absolute treasure.
Thank you.
And I've been watching you over the years. You get better and better and better, and you're nailing it. You understand, in my opinion, exactly what is going on here. And, these guys like to portray that they have everything in control and that we're all going to be run by the cyborgs in less than 10 years. And it's all so magical. They do have a bit of the God complex, in addition, I think, to sociopathic, malignant narcissism, but I digress. All right. I think that these guys have just gotten too much power. A lot of it had to do with the honeypot operations, operating in blackmail and coercion. We know that it wasn't even just child sex trafficking. It was also money laundering and weapons trafficking. And Whitney Webb has done some really great reporting on that as well, which, we don't need to get into. But they're going to push this, right? Even if it's not ready, they certainly are. We saw with Operation Warp Speed and the rollout of the mRNA shots, the bioweapons, that they will talk a big game and they will roll something out incredibly clunky and incredibly horrifying. And they can actually kill and harm a lot of people in the process of this, even if they can't get it done. Right. And we're seeing the wheels fall off of the AI tech jalopy as we speak today. Right. Like the technology is not there. And AI I think is becoming more and more clear to people that the digital currencies, the AI push, that all of it is a lot of hype and a bit of a bubble, a massive bubble. That doesn't mean that they're not going to go for it and hurt a lot of people. Where do you think we are in exposing them, getting a critical mass of enough people to understand what their agenda is, getting a critical mass, enough people to understand that the two parties are working together, they're not separate, and have enough people pushing back against it so that we can beat them? Because I don't want the future that they envision for us. I know you don't want the future that they envision for us. And I know you're doing some work with your Freedom Cells platform to try to move things in this direction of awakening, real awakening, not the fake awakening that they pushed out a couple years ago. Where do you see them in their mission? Do you think something's going to imminently happen, like quickly? And then what do we do about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I take two conflicting viewpoints. On one hand, I do think that we have more people than ever talking about digital IDs, talking about the dangers of CBDCs or even stable coins, people who understand the rise of facial recognition, people who even just, I'll say the name Peter Thiel and Palantir. I produced a mini documentary about this last October, right before the election. Myself, you mentioned Whitney, and others, we were really trying to ring the alarm bells, and I'm sure you were as well, telling people like, look at the people backing Trump. It's the same people backing Kamala Harris. You think you're defeating the deep state, but you're playing right into it. And a year ago, it didn't seem like so many people knew who Peter Thiel was, Palantir, but now I see that name everywhere. And I take that as a sign. Okay, people are learning. There's more awareness than there was just 1 year ago. And I think that's true, and it's a positive development. I also think if we get off Twitter and we get off Rumble and we just talk to the average person, they don't know what's going on. So sometimes I think we make the mistake of putting ourselves in bubbles and not realizing that all of our kind of comrades, associates online, whatever you want to say, fellow conspiracy theorists, we know what's going on. And that group has grown for sure, not just discount that there is a real awakening, as you said. But I still think the masses are not aware. I'll give you an example. I just flew back to Mexico, where I live, from the US just yesterday. And once again, as with every flight I've taken, including the flight to DC a couple of weeks ago, I'm the only person opting out of the facial recognition that they're rolling out at the airports. 99.9% of the people are complying. Right. So yeah, it may be one or two, like me and you on one flight, and the rest of everybody's going along. And COVID was a great way to train people to do this, because for anybody who hasn't been to the airport recently, it is not mandatory to do facial recognition, but they're absolutely starting to test it out, especially at international terminals and even some of the domestic ones. And it looks just like COVID, where there's two little feet on the ground and they tell you stand right there, and there's a tablet or some kind of camera right there. And people just stand there. They don't even think about it, takes a picture of your face, and then they get on the airport. It is totally optional. You can stand to the side and say, no, thank you, hand them your passport or your ID, and they will do it the old-fashioned way. But I will tell you, when I did that last week, one of the ladies, she kind of was giving me a little bit of gruff about it. She's like, well, you don't want to do it? I said, it's optional, right? She said, yeah, it's optional. But just so you know, she said, it's going to be mandatory by October or November. Now, I haven't seen that anywhere that the U.S. government has mentioned that, so I don't know if she heard something from the airline or something. The point is, it will be mandatory sooner or later. And the reason I share that story is, I think in terms of that, like the average person who's just out there, they're not plugged into my show or your show, or kind of perpetually on Twitter and paying attention to these things, or on Rumble, these alternative platforms. They're not really paying attention to this. They're just going, these are just average people just trying to live their lives. And I have empathy and totally get, that mentality. Look, I'm just trying to protect my family. I'm not going to pay attention to crazy stuff going on in the world. But that's not going to stop it. And that's not going to save you, because sooner or later, those crazy things, the technocracy, the invasions of liberty and privacy are going to be at your front door. And so I wish that there was a mass movement of people resisting facial recognition, just as one example. But unfortunately, I don't see that. I mean, let's go back to 2012. There was a national opt-out of the body scanners day. This made mainstream news. There was people during Thanksgiving 2012, people were encouraged to go to the airports. If you're flying that day, opt out of the body scanners. Maybe if we can slow them down, they'll get rid of them. Well, it made the news for 1 or 2 days. And here we are in 2025. The body scanners are still there. I opt out of them still, but the most people go right in.
Looks like we lost Derrick quickly. I'm not sure what happened there. He was on a roll, and I certainly want to make sure that we get him back so that we can get the rest. Okay. So are we reconnecting with Derrick? Is he reconnecting right now? Okay, so we're going to try to reconnect with beautiful. Okay, we have Derrick back. Sorry about that. Just a little bit of a glitch on I think it's probably the internet connection. We've had such issues with internet connection this week and last week on the Shannon Joy Show. I don't know what is happening, why this is so difficult to do, but it looks as if we may have lost Derrick. He's back. Yay, you're back.
I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Hopefully you got most of what I said.
I know. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think in the same way, I think it is going to come down to a choice. I think that they're going to push the envelope in the same way with COVID lockdowns. They tormented us and tortured us until the only way we could get out of our prisons in the box was to take their shots, right? I think at some point there is going to be a choice. And I agree with you. It is disheartening to see so many normie Americans, right, not really seeing what the danger is. But I also think that that's kind of the story of human history. It's always that way. And that it's going to take this moment, as long as there is a large enough minority, people like you and me, who are having these conversations and resisting. And I'll tell, here's a good news story. My daughter just deleted TikTok off of her phone. And it was after, of her own volition. She's 17 years old. And she has come to realize, that she has been targeted and marketed, and her information has been collected and it's used to frighten her. And she's, they do a lot of the doom and gloom, like the Armageddon scenarios. And at one point she just said, she came to me a couple times. She was upset about some of the things that she had seen. And just the other day, she's like, I just deleted TikTok. I'm tired of being manipulated. And I was like, thank you, Jesus. Okay, let's go on, Mimi, So, I think that more and more Americans, I will say this, I do believe people are getting a little creeped out. I think the normies are getting creeped out. And that's where we want them, right? We want them to distrust this administration, both political parties. I think the trust level among Americans for what is going on in Washington, D.C. is absolutely in the toilet on a million different issues. And so we just have to keep pushing for that. And you are part of that, Derrick. We only have about a minute left. I, again, so appreciate you. Derrick needs your support, guys. He needs our support again. Independent, truly independent media is the only way forward in this country. And our independent media outlets who are outside of the two-party political paradigm need your support. It is not easy being independent. I can relate. Derrick, final thoughts. And if you could please let people know how they can support you and help you. We want to make sure that you are strong, you are fortified, you have everything you need to keep up this amazing
Thank you for that.
reporting. Yeah, and you will certainly come back on this show. I would love to have you as a regular.
Absolutely.
Because phenomenal. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for that opportunity. Yeah. So I just want to close and say one thing. If people do want to learn more about my work, it is theconsciousresistance.com. If you want to support me, theconsciousresistance.com/invest. But most importantly, I want to share a link for everybody here. I think I might have shared it last time I was on your show at theconsciousresistance.com/EXB. EXB, it stands for exit and build. And this is my ideas on how we can thrive in the face of the technocracy. I don't think it's going to come from politics or apathy or violence. I think we need to focus on building parallel alternative systems that are not controlled by these people. And at that page, there's what I call the 45-day exit and build challenge. And it'll get you interested in these ideas. It talks about technology, food, health, land, all these different areas that I think are important, and has some basic ideas for somebody who might be new to this on how you can get started on your journey and see what you might be able to do outside of the hands of these systems that they're building. Because ultimately, we need to do something. Talking about it is one step, raising awareness, but we also need to prepare for the potential that they do get their system built. And what is our life going to be like? And I think that the answer is going to be outside of their system by building parallel counter systems. So thank you so much for having me, Shannon.
Excellent. Excellent work. Derrick Broze, if you are not following him on Twitter, you need to do it right now. He is linked up. All of his information is linked in the show notes of the Shannon Joy Show, right in the description. Derrick, keep up the amazing work. Let's keep this collaboration going. And we can't wait to see what you're going to do next. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I told you, Derrick, amazing, absolutely amazing reporting and a lot of really important information that we just got. So let's make sure that we support Derrick. Again, his Twitter handle at @DBrosLiveFree. Follow him on Twitter and support him at theconsciousresistance.com. We're going to go to a quick break. Mary Talley Bowden will be with us in the Joy Virtual Studio for our crossover. Her show is coming up in just about 20 minutes. It is On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. She has a huge lineup of guests. So we're going to take a quick break, one commercial. We'll come right back, talk to Mary. Keep it tuned right here on the Shannon Joy Show. One of the missions here at the Shannon Joy Show is to stay healthy. We need to be as naturally healthy as humanly possible so that we can stay out of the medical industrial complex. We don't want to be on pharmaceutical products. We don't want our bodies to be susceptible to viruses or anything that they are subjecting us to. We don't want to have to rely on the medical industrial complex or pharmaceutical companies in order to exist and survive. And that means daily, like a lifestyle of healthy living and getting the nutrients that we need. And as you guys know, collagen is a regular part of my daily routine for health. It's also now a part of my husband, devastatingly handsome Dr. Joy's daily routine as well. And this is because it is known as the crucial building block for your bones, your joints, muscles, tendons, and ligaments, as well as your skin, hair, and nails. So as we age, we just stop producing. We don't stop producing collagen, but it really slows down. You need to put it back in your body. And this is why daily collagen is so very important. And my favorite collagen, of course, is Native Path Collagen. Why? Because it is the best. It is the cleanest. It is 100% grass-fed bovine collagen. So no plant-based anything here. It has one ingredient, nothing else is added. It's hydrolyzed collagen, which is the best kind. It dissolves perfectly into any liquid, hot or cold. It's that clean. It also has only the types 1 and 3 collagens. And as I mentioned, it's sourced only from very, very happy cows, happy, grass-fed, free-range bovine cows. So no marine, egg, or chicken sources at all. It is also the lowest cost on the market per serving with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You will not get better collagen for a lower price point than you will with Native Path, but you have to go to my site, which is getnativepathcollagen.com/joy. That is getnativepathcollagen.com/joy for 45% off. And yes, 95 day? What did I say? 65 day, 365 day money back guarantee. You can send them back empty containers if you don't like it, but you're going to love it. So make sure you get your discount today. Go to getnativepathcollagen.com/joy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Without further ado, it is the Wednesday crossover with me, Shannon Joy, and our amazing friend and colleague, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. She is warming up for her show coming up in just about 15 minutes on call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. She's live right here on Rumble and the entire SJ network, along with her Twitter platform as well, reaching, upwards over 1 million eyes and ears every single month on those platforms. And you've done an amazing job, by the way. This is show number 3. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm so excited because my equipment all seems to be working. This is the first time. So that's half the battle.
Everything is operating on all cylinders. I actually don't want to say that because I don't want to jinx anything. But you have a huge show today. I would love to talk to you a little bit about the press conference and the Tylenol wars and all of the things that happened just the other day regarding autism and vaccines. And we can talk a little bit about that. But first, tell everyone what you have lined up for them today. For your live show. I know that you're bringing Toby Rogers in. He's amazing, and some other amazing guests. What do you have planned?
Well, it's been so busy in the public health arena lately. So that's why I have 3 guests today. Texas just made ivermectin officially over the counter. Greg Abbott signed it, I think, a week ago, and then it goes into effect in about 90 days. Okay. So I wanted to talk to somebody in another state where it's already over the counter to see what's going on, because apparently it's not as easy to get as we had hoped. So I'm bringing on a man, Brock Thompson, who was instrumental in getting the bill passed in Arkansas. He actually helped write the bill. And now he's going to tell us what's going on because it's not as easy to get as we would have hoped. And then I am bringing on Kevin McKernan, who is a scientist. He is an expert in DNA and RNA sequencing. And I want him to give us some reflections in reaction to the ACIP meeting last week, because the focus of that was DNA contamination that came up. We saw Pfizer and Moderna give us some really weak responses to the questions that were asked. So he's going to give us his perspectives. Why is DNA contamination a big deal? And is this a big deal in the COVID shots? And then finally, we're going to have Toby Rogers, who recently testified in the Senate with the last health hearing where they were going over the COVID shots and autism. And he's going to give us his perspectives on, is Tylenol really a big deal? What should we be looking at? I have a feeling I can predict his answer, but it'll be interesting to see what he says, because he has written so much on this topic, really dug into it. went over all the articles on autism and has some well-founded theories on what's really going on.
Okay. No, that sounds like an amazing lineup. And yeah, I thought that you and I should dish a little bit on the press conference, which I posted out today on Twitter. I'm talking about the autism press conference. They've been hyping this now for 4 or 5 months. You know, this is going to be the moment. It's going to be groundbreaking. It's going to be historic. We're finally going to make that link. And everyone kind of assumed that they would make the link between the increase in the epidemic of childhood autism to vaccines, right? The shots, you know, almost 100 shots given to children before the age of 19. And so that was the expectation. We saw a tamping down of that expectation. At first, we thought they weren't even going to mention vaccines, which would have been atrocious. But we knew that they were going to bring up Tylenol. And from my perspective, I'll get your perspective on this, but from my perspective, you know, I posted out today and called it a PR poison pill, essentially, because what should have been a very simple, open and close slam dunk case with peer-reviewed literature, data, science, and a very clear correlation between the childhood vaccine schedule and the rise of autism. It should have been sober. It should have been historic. And what happened halfway through with Trump coming in and just blathering on about Tylenol, making one absurd statement after another. I mean, it really just took apart the gravity of the entire situation. And so now the door is open for Jimmy Kimmel to have, actors on his show mocking the entire, Tylenol thing. I don't even know if the science is there with Tylenol, but it just seems, and part of me thinks that they do this on purpose. They want to distract away from the fact that despite the rhetoric, and I am glad, let me just be clear, I'm glad that they mentioned autism in proximity of the word vaccine. That is something that hasn't happened. I've been on this beat for 12 years, and we've never seen this amount of discourse on this. However, so much of it is now wrapped in absurdity. It muddles everything, confuses everyone, injects an enormous amount of chaos, and also distracts from the fact that as of today, hundreds of thousands of children are still being injected with the childhood vaccine schedule. They are not getting informed consent. They have no way to sue the vaccine companies or the pharmaceutical companies if they are harmed or tragically killed. The mRNA shots are still on the market. They're still being recommended to pregnant women. They are still being injected into children as young as 6 months old. And like, that's when you boil it all down and clear everything else away, and all of their agendas or their ideas or their marketing campaigns or strategies to play 17-dimensional chess in order to get these things off the market, we are left with that reality. And that reality means that necessarily thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of children will be injured and will die because of this. And that's why I'm a little frustrated, me personally, and I know people have different ideas. Go ahead.
I mean, it's politically easy to go after Tylenol, right? It's not such a hot topic. Of course, the Democrats have taken the other position because it's so politicized, obviously. And they also, you notice they leaked it. So they wanted to soften the blow because they knew
they did.
How upset people would be when they found out that the focus of their investigation has landed on acetaminophen and not the elephant in the room. So I am very excited to talk to Toby Rogers because he's the expert in this arena. From what I understand, the Tylenol studies are confounded because they don't account for vaccine status. So that's a huge deal. Like, how do we really sort out what's what if you don't account for vaccine status? And, from what I've read, honestly, I had to educate myself more on this issue. And there is some valid data showing that, acetaminophen during pregnancy or in early childhood can be neurotoxic, so toxic to the brain. I always understood it to be potentially hepatotoxic, dangerous to the liver. I was never aware that it could damage the brain. And it's interesting, cats can't take Tylenol. It's neurotoxic to cats. And there are other animal studies showing that it is neurotoxic. But that's not something I learned in medical school. Now granted, I'm not counseling pregnant women on what they should and shouldn't take. But we were always led to believe that if you need to take something for pain or for a fever during pregnancy, that acetaminophen was your only option. I mean, everybody's taught in medical school that you can't give aspirin or ibuprofen during pregnancy. But the understanding is that, if you need to take something, and it's not willy-nilly, but, if you've got a high fever, then Tylenol is what you want to take. And there are people that say that even a fever can cause autism. So there's studies showing that. So it's kind of muddy, like, okay, well, what's worse, a fever or Tylenol if you get, during pregnancy in terms of your risk of autism?
Well, and every mother knows that the first thing that the pediatrician says to you when you inject your child with a vaccine is that, well, they might have a fever. One of the most common adverse reactions to routine childhood vaccines are fevers and encephalitis and inflammation and a rash, right? And then they would say, all right, we're going to inject your baby. And if they have any type of reaction, give them Tylenol. So of course, you could see a correlation between, autism or an adverse event and Tylenol, if Tylenol is the middleman between the vaccine and the adverse reaction, right? So it's very convenient. And it also seems a little diabolical to me that's what they would do, because, and I hate to say it, I'm sure that Bobby Kennedy Jr. didn't come up with the marketing plan or the PR plan. Maybe Trump didn't either, but someone decided, let's go for Tylenol. And it's like the perfect villain, isn't it? Right. Because now you have, and Ed, I don't know if you have images. I mean, it's all over TikTok and social media. These pregnant,
it's
liberal,
horrifying
birthing people. They can't call themselves women. They're birthing people, right? Because if they're woke leftists. So now we have pregnant leftist birthing people downing, inordinate amounts of Tylenol in order to, prove Trump wrong. And there she is. Like, this is just absurd.
Oh, gosh, just
it's so disturbing. Is what I say. Yes. It doesn't have to be this way, though. That's what kills me, is that it doesn't have to be this way. And Tylenol's out there saying, we've never recommended Tylenol for pregnant women. Then why was every pregnant woman told to take Tylenol? Like, how does this go on for 40, 60 years? And there's never a discussion about it.
Well, and I tried to dig into it this morning, and AI told me, and I learned my lesson. AI told me that the FDA categorized it as Class B during pregnancy, which Class B means generally considered safe during pregnancy. But then I dug deeper, and it looks like they did that a long time ago, but then they removed it. I saw one that said Class C. There is an FDA warning from 2015, which I was never aware of, that giving Tylenol during pregnancy could increase the risk of ADHD and neurological disorders. 2015. But, and that brings us back to why our Surgeon General is so important to get these messages out to the public. I will say, medical school, we were told safe and effective during pregnancy. Right. And another lesson I've learned.
Yeah. Well, the worst part of all of this, again, is that no one's talking about vaccines. No one's talking about vaccines anymore. Everyone's talking about Tylenol, and everything's still on the market. When do people in the medical freedom community acknowledge that they're not going to do anything about vaccines or mRNA or saMRNA. Like, I know that so many want to be optimistic and they want to believe that Bobby is playing, again, 17-dimensional chess, and there's this grand strategy out there. But the longer this goes on, and I can tell you this as someone who has observed and reported on politics for 12 years, and someone who is also a marketer. So I was a marketer for 14 years before I got behind the mic for radio, television, and billboards. I wrote campaigns. I did copywriting. I did, PR, all the things. And the longer that this gets delayed, the less likely it is that we are going to get anything done.
But we have to remember, and this came out at this ACIP meeting, only 10% of healthcare workers are obeying the CDC, are getting the COVID shot. And we may hear from New York Times and ABC News that everybody's continuing to get these COVID shots, but the reality is the market forces may be what we need to act, because there's just not, I just don't think, especially now that our censorship is slowly eroding. I mean, now we can hopefully get on TikTok, and now we can hopefully get on YouTube, and our message is getting out more and more. But I think that they want us to think that the public is on their side, but in reality, the public is on our side. They are not getting these shots. And
that's right.
Exemption requests, at least what I'm seeing, exemption requests are, I keep getting more and more people asking me to write exemptions for their kids. So there's a Representative Gosar in Arizona is trying to eliminate the need for religious exemptions in our country. I mean, we need to get to the point where exemptions are just unnecessary. That no one should need an exemption to have something injected in their body or in their child's body. It's completely ridiculous. So I think that's what we need to focus on now.
I agree with you. I share your optimism about the culture and the market, right? It is the political apparatus that I think, personally, this is my opinion, I think we spend an exorbitant amount of time on the political machine and hoping that we can change what's going to happen within the political machine when there's a whole culture out there that we can impact. And so that's always been my beef. I've always been like, let's focus on the culture, let's focus on the state. And you have too, with the bottom up level, what's happening at the state level, getting ivermectin over the counter, getting rid of medical mandates at a statewide level or a countywide level, and also increasing the number of exemptions, that type of stuff, I think is highly impactful. But then it's like we're all waiting with bated breath, and everyone's watching this, this PR campaign, this press conference, and sometimes I do wonder if it's a bit of a waste of time. But I see you on the live chat. I see you, Green T369. At least Trump told a story about autism and vaccines. And I will acknowledge that. There was so much absurdity, riddled in or, woven into that press conference. But the story of, vaccine and autism, it's the first time we've seen those stories being told, especially from the president of the United States of America in a PR, in a press conference. So, I will grudgingly give him that. Okay, there we go. That's one of the silver linings. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, good luck with your upcoming show. Why don't we go to a break? I'm going to say a quick word about our sponsors, the Wellness Company, as you get prepared to welcome your guests into On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. She is live everywhere on the SJ Network, and I will keep an eye on the live chat as well and see if there are any questions, but you have a packed show today with guests. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. And when we come back, we will be live with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. Okay, very quickly, guys. Scott Gordon, I see your comments. The most amazing live chat in all of Rumble. Appreciate all of you. This show, it's been a huge lift, a heavy lift. I know that Dr. Bowden has worked so hard putting this together, and it's going great. I mean, this is week number 3. She had Dr. Joe Latipo on last week. Dr. McCullough was on with her as well. Dr. Kelly Victory. This is the cutting edge of what is happening in medicine today and in the field of health. And Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, not only as a doctor herself, understands the system, but she also understands the political system as well. And unfortunately, health has become political. And I think that's why On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is so incredibly important. And I want you all to know that we could not bring it to you. I mean, this has been, as I mentioned, a heavy lift. It's not inexpensive to put a show like this out for you every single week. And we couldn't do it without our friends over at the Wellness Company. Very, very thankful for this amazing organization, which has been on the front line in health truth and health freedom. They came out of the dark days of COVID-19. They brought you the iconic emergency medication kit. They brought you the Dr. Peter McCullough protocol for a spike detox, and just so many important freedom-based goods and services, products and services that we needed. A second opinion. You were able to go to the Wellness Company and find a doctor if you needed a medical exemption, or you needed a second opinion, or you didn't trust the medical industrial complex in your own town or village. These are all of the amazing things that have been brought to the country by the Wellness Company, and we're very, very thankful for them. I want to talk to you guys today about the amazing medical kit. This is something that they rolled out, the emergency medical kit. And as you guys know, I mean, we're moving into the cold and flu season. And I don't know about all of you, but I don't have time to get sick. I don't have time to go to the doctor. I don't enjoy going to the doctor. I prefer to stay out of the medical industrial complex as much as I possibly can. And so this is why I love the medical emergency kit from the Wellness Company. You can literally walk to your cabinet, open your medical emergency kit, and match your symptoms to the doctor recommended guide and start your treatment immediately. This is not a first aid kit. It is a mini urgent care right in your home. And the way it works, I mean, you just simply go to the website, you order your kit, and then you meet with one of their physicians to get your prescriptions all set. And they send you the kit, and then you have it when you need it. You're going to find real prescriptions that treat over 39 conditions like COVID, strep throat, pneumonia, urinary tract infections, and more. And the best part is there are no waiting rooms, no pharmacy lines, just the right medication that you need right when you need it. And every home should have one. So ordering is simple. As I mentioned, at checkout, you complete a short intake form, and a licensed doctor will review and fill your prescriptions. The kit then arrives to your home in about 1 week. Be prepared and save yourself time and money. The medical emergency kit puts urgent care right in your hand. And right now, you can get $30 off your emergency medical kit plus free shipping if you go to twc.health.mary. That's www.twc.health/Mary, and use that promo code MARY to save up to $30 off and free shipping. In fact, you can use the Mary promo code for all of your purchases at the Wellness Company for an extra percentage off. So get that medical emergency kit today. Don't get caught. As you know, we don't have time to get sick, and we don't want to be in that medical industrial complex. Take your health into your own hands and go to the wellnesscompany.com today. That's twc.health/Mary today to get started. All right, without further ado, it is now time to launch On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden.
Hello. We've had a very busy week in public health, and so we have a very busy show today. I have three guests. First is Brock Thompson, who was instrumental in getting ivermectin over the counter in Arkansas. Those of you who live in Texas are maybe aware that ivermectin just officially became over the counter, or at least you don't need a prescription for it. And that law will go in effect on December 4th. But Greg Abbott did sign it, and we're all very excited. But in Arkansas, apparently there's some trouble. So apparently it's over the counter, but you still can't get it. So Brock's going to talk to us about what's going on. Then we're going to have Dr. Kevin McKernan, who is a DNA researcher, and he's going to give us some insights in reaction to the ACIP meeting last week, where DNA contamination concerns were brought up and basically dismissed by Pfizer and Moderna. And finally, we're going to have Dr. Toby Rogers, who is a researcher and expert in autism, and he's going to give us our reaction to the big press conference on Monday, where most of the blame has been put on Tylenol. So, and for those of you new to the show, I'm on here every Wednesday. I follow Shannon Joy. She's my boss, and she and I overlap for about 30 minutes and sort of catch up on the public health news. And then I'm on here from 12:30 to 1:30. I live stream on my X account. We live stream on Shannon's accounts, and then it'll be available through podcasts once we get all of that going. We're just waiting on our friend Brock to join us. Brock, this will be his very first podcast. He is a businessman, and he's not a politician, and he's not in the medical field at all. But what's amazing is he just was passionate about improving access to ivermectin, and this is in Arkansas. He went to his legislator, he went to his representative, and he said, hey, why isn't ivermectin over the counter? And basically had some private conversations with the representatives in Arkansas, and they let him sort of take the lead in getting this bill created and drafted and eventually passed. This all happened in less than a year. I first encountered Brock in February of this year. And then the law was passed and signed by Governor Huckabee in August of 2025. So it happened fairly quickly. And what's just crazy about it is he has no political experience at all. Just walked in there and showed interest. He testified, never testified before. When he does join us, this will be his first podcast ever. So it just shows you what the average person is capable of doing. You don't have to have a social media presence. You don't have to have experience in politics. He did have some background experience, just exposure to the healthcare field, but he's not a doctor. He's not a pharmacist. He just had interest, and he had perseverance, and he had the right attitude. And it's just a testament to what all of us could do. What he has told me is that the pharmacies now, though, they're not supplying the ivermectin. So they're not allowing access. And there's a glitch. There's some sort of holdup with the State Board of Pharmacy. So I think Brock is joining us now to tell us what's going on. Hey, Brock.
Hey, good morning.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
I gave everybody your first podcast, and I gave everybody sort of the backstory, but tell us, okay, the law was passed, and tell us now what's going on. Why can't people get ivermectin in Arkansas, even though there's a law there?
So it took us a little bit to try to find a manufacturer within the state, because obviously some of these national manufacturers weren't interested in this cheap and effective drug. So we have a manufacturer now that is making it, that has been lab tested. It's naturalsolutionslabs.com. They are only going to supply people in Arkansas with the medication, and they're going to sell it directly from their website to the people's homes.
Do you have any idea what they're going to charge?
I do. I was not really. It's not crazy cheap, but it's not crazy expensive. I believe it's 3 milligram tablets for 30 days, and it's going to be $64.95, I believe.
So about $2, a little over $2 a pill. Does that sound right for a 3 milligram pill?
Right.
Okay, that's
And
that's better than what I could buy.
I saw some of your posts and some of your phone calls to some of the pharmacies. And one of the things that I was trying to explain to some of the individuals here in Arkansas is that, this manufacturer's got so much upfront cost from lawyers to production, and we're hoping the price is going to come down because we know it's such a cheap drug. But I'm not involved in that.
Yeah,
So I'm just hoping.
how long did it, I don't know if you can answer this, but how long did it take them to ramp up a manufacturing plant? Because from what I understand, there was only one place in the United States where you could buy it wholesale, and it was in New Jersey. So this might be the second manufacturing plant, and I'm curious, do you have any idea how long it took them to get that going?
So my understanding is they are a current manufacturer of other products. And so for them to just shift, I mean, they make it in capsules. It's not pressed caplets, it's capsules. And so I think they just changed gears, went through their production process just like they would anything else. And so I think it probably took them, I want to say 4 or 5 months. The conversation I had with the owner was that as soon as he saw that the law was going to, go into place, he ramped it up. So that could be 3 or 4 months.
And it's unusual because normally you can't buy a drug directly from the manufacturer. You have to go through even if it's over the counter. So this is sort of a first. It's going to be interesting to see. Well, and then tell us, the bill that you helped draft is a little bit different from other states because it doesn't require even a pharmacist, correct?
Right. When I was looking at the whole process, Tennessee had their bill and reached out to some of the pharmacists there. And, people have different opinions. And we saw even in Arkansas where pharmacists were just deciding they weren't going to fill a prescription because of their own, decisions. And so when I wrote the bill, it was more of, this product is safe. It's been around forever. It's in third world countries that you go get at any store. And then I just started looking at Tylenol and Advil and all those others. And so that the reason I wrote it is because we didn't want to have any kind of potential blocks. It does create a slippery slope, and we are, a month, 6 weeks into the law being passed as of August 5th. So as it stands now, I've not seen anybody from government or licensing that's had a problem with this particular manufacturer.
Do you know why the pharmacists won't dispense it?
I don't know if the pharmacist won't dispense it. I do know that the State Board of Pharmacy has some challenges with some of the wording. The conversations that I've had along with others has something to do with notwithstanding any other laws, which I think I can extrapolate has to do with the FDA and, like medical marijuana and all those other components. So, they had about 4 or 5 months of the language in place, and now they're questioning things. I don't know to what degree. I'm not an attorney or in the medical field at all, but from my understanding is they're still looking at it. The conversation I had with the manufacturers that the law allows them to sell it directly to Arkansans. It's not going to be sent out anywhere outside the state. So you have to be here to be able to order it. And I understand that. So far, they've been shipping product to people.
I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, maybe we need more drugs to be sold that way to save money. So I know that,
Yeah.
I explained to everybody that you're a businessman, you're not a politician, you're not in
Right.
the healthcare field. What prompted you to go down this route, and what advice would you give other people?
So it's interesting. No good deed goes unpunished. And I ran across an article where a doctor in Arkansas got sued for putting people on ivermectin, and they settled. And so don't know any of the details about that, but it just occurred to me that this drug is around the world and won the Nobel Peace Prize for human consumption. I followed your story, and to be honest with you, you've really inspired me a lot. I followed all of your activities. I read Pierre Corey's book. I think he's incredible. And so I just thought it shouldn't be so hard. And I'm just a regular guy, just like anybody else. I just happened to start asking a bunch of questions, and I got in contact with some legislators, and Senator Alan Clark, made the call, and he said, "If you have the idea, I'll support you," and we kind of went from there.
That's wonderful. I mean, what advice would you give to other people? I mean, even, little things, maybe not going down there and writing your own bill. Like what could people do?
I think the lesson from all this is you got to do the right thing, and that's the first thing that you need to put in your head is, out of all the noise that we get in through media, social media, and all the things, if you just in your head you think that, man, really something needs to be done, you just need to take it upon yourself to do that. I think the big takeaway as well is start local. It's everything has to do with local. I can't change DC. I can't change politics across the country, but I had one call with one legislator, and trust me, they're busy. But I got somebody that believed in what I was saying and believed in the people, his constituents. So if you just deal locally and work with smaller group, I think you can make a major impact.
Well, I agree. So I went to DC maybe, I guess, over the summer and walked the halls of Congress, and it was so much harder to talk to anybody than it is just going in the Texas House or Texas Senate. It's much more approachable on a local level. Well, thank you so much, Brock, for coming on, and thank you for. I mean, the people of Arkansas really owe you a debt of gratitude for all your work. So congratulations, and
Thank you.
I look forward. Hopefully, it'll become accessible to all. So thanks, Brock.
Well, listen, a lot is owed to you, and I thank you for your leadership and your guidance and your continued platform. So, my first podcast is with you, very talented person. So thank you for all of that.
Oh, well, thanks, Brock.
You're welcome.
All right, and we're going to take a break and come back and talk to Kevin McKernan, give us his insights on DNA contamination in the mRNA shots, and is it a big deal?
I would say a huge thank you to Brock and a huge thank you to the people of Arkansas and also Dr. Mary Taylor Bowden from the American people, right? Because hopefully that legislation that Brock was able to achieve through organization at the local level, hopefully that will come to every state across the United States of America, because ivermectin truly is a miracle drug. And I want to talk about ivermectin as we allow Mary time to get her next guest set up. Ivermectin in terms of parasitic infections. So I've been looking at parasites for the past few months, and I was actually very curious about this whole new idea about parasitic infections causing so many health impacts, right? Now, when you go to the doctor, and if you go to the doctor, what do you go for? Like the flu symptoms or cold symptoms. And we go there and they always talk about a bacterial infection or a viral infection. Like everything is bacteria or viral. You never, ever, ever hear them talk about, well, maybe maybe you have a parasitic infection. Well, I looked it up on the interweb. I went to actually the Mayo Clinic's website to just see, I'm like, what's up with all the parasitic infections? And they defined it here, which I thought was really interesting. They said that a parasitic infection, they do exist. So it is a thing. It happens. And they're diseases caused by organisms that live off of another living thing. They can cause fever, fatigue, intestinal symptoms, skin rashes, or neurological symptoms. And you can get them from all kinds of things like contaminated food or water. So it's actually a thing, but no one ever really talks about it. Well, more and more people are looking for a really good and impactful parasitic cleanse. And ivermectin is actually one of those critical ingredients that you can use to cleanse. There's groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald revealed a direct link between chronic parasitic infections and neurological diseases like multiple sclerosis. Parasites, as I mentioned, can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. That's more reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. And the Wellness Company has an amazing product for that. They have a solution. It is ivermectin plus menbendazole. It's the gold standard in parasite solutions, now combined in one cleanse to combat the parasitic infections that you might pick up over the year. It's designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. It's medical grade, so it is not some trendy herbal gimmick. All you have to do is fill out a quick intake and get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door so you can get started on your cleanse. I'm going to try this. I've heard that the parasitic cleanses are very interesting, but I definitely want to do this. Something I've been thinking about. All you have to do is head to twchealth.mary or health/Mary and use the promo code MARY to save $60 off of your cleanse. You also get free shipping. So you can start that cleanse today. Go to twc.mary or .health/Mary and use the promo code Mary to save $60 off plus free shipping. Also remember, anywhere on the TWC website, if you use that promo code MARY, you will get an additional 10% off your order. So if you've done the parasite cleanse, send me an email, send me a message. I'm curious about how it goes, but I'm definitely going to start that. And I'll let you know how it goes for me. All right. So we're going to get back to Mary's show. She has her next guest lined up, Kevin McKiernan, who is just a rock star. Can't wait to hear from him. Keep it tuned right here on Call with Dr. Mary Taylor Bowden.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. And we are back. We're going to talk now, shift over to the COVID shots. And last week, ACIP, ACIP they have a meeting every 3 months. And this was the September meeting where the first day they were going to talk about hepatitis B shots, but then they tabled that and talked about MMRV and whether those 4 shots should be given, those 4 antigens should be given together. And they decided they would not recommend that they be given together. But one little interesting tidbit from that is that really wasn't new information because they had already recommended that if you were under 4 years old, you should not get the MMRV shot anyway. So then the second day, they talked about the COVID shots and basically, it's a little bit confusing because earlier the FDA had sort of changed its recommendations, and the CDC's this ACIP meeting, which still has to be approved by the CDC director. But the conclusion at this ACIP meeting was that they're not going to recommend it universally as they once did. They're going to leave it between the doctor and the patient, which under normal circumstances would be great. But as we learned in COVID during the pandemic is that we can't really trust the large majority of doctors because the large majority of doctors recommended these shots for pregnant women and for children and, were very hostile to the patients that would not get these shots. So if you've been following me, you know that this is not enough for me. I am not settling for this. Yes, I believe that informed consent is important, but we have to make sure that we'll actually get informed consent, because I don't trust that we will. They also said that we'll have to have 6 risk factors given to the patients who choose to get these shots. And I need to go back and see what those particular risk factors are. But those will be handed out to every patient that get the shots. And, my concern is that, yes, this is informed consent. That's what we need. But these shots are all risk and no benefit. I mean, I continue to see patients coming into my office nearly on a daily basis who have persistent severe disabilities from these shots. I saw a woman my age come in last week who had 2 shots in her right arm, and now her right arm won't stop shaking, and that's been for 4 years. And she's seen multiple doctors, all who have gaslit her and will not even entertain the possibility that her nonstop tremor in her arm could be from this COVID shot. Now, she was a previously healthy person. She was a marathon runner. She was a teacher, and now she cannot work and has trouble writing, has trouble doing sort of, being her normal everyday living. So, I reported her to VAERS because, of course, none of her other doctors would do so. And this is 4 years after the fact. I got her COVID shot antibody, her spike protein antibody levels came back at 10,800, which, given that she had the shots 4 years ago and does not recall getting sick anytime recently with COVID or any other kind of virus, having antibody levels that high 4 years after the shots is not normal. What I am seeing in my practice is patients that got the shots, on average, their spike protein antibody level is about 13,000. And the patients that didn't get the shots, the spike protein level is about 1,300. And the 13,000 is actually probably an underestimation, because 7% of the patients that I tested, their levels were off the upper limit of normal for the test. The upper limit of normal for the test is 25,000. And so I'm getting patients where it is above 25,000. And the vast majority of my patients got 2 shots, occasionally 3, but that beyond that, no. So it's very concerning to me. It suggests that there is ongoing spike protein production, or spike protein that the body is unable to break down. There's a component of these shots, a pseudouridine, which we don't have a single study showing that the body is capable of breaking down pseudouridine. We have the lipid nanoparticles, which allow the mRNA to cross cell membranes. And that's why this DNA contamination, part of the reason is concerning, because if this product contains residual DNA, and it could just be a DNA fragment, it could be a plasmid DNA, and it's able to cross the cell membrane, then it can escape the body's ability to attack it and destroy it. And so it can get into the cell, it can get into the nucleus, it can integrate into our DNA, it can therefore produce abnormal proteins, it could inhibit tumor suppressor genes, it could cause frame shifting, and when Kevin McKernan gets on here, he will tell us all about it. But essentially, this was brought up during the ACIP meeting, and I think it was Pfizer, the representative said, no, reverse transcription is not a possibility. Well, reverse transcription occurs where the mRNA integrates into the DNA. And yes, it is not common, but a quick search on the internet proves that this is not correct. It can reverse transcription is a possibility. The other factor that really didn't come up during the meeting is the plasmid DNAs, which are actually, that's designed, that's how these gene therapy products are designed. They use the plasmid DNA because it's easily integrated into the DNA. And so if there are plasmid DNA in these products, they shouldn't be there. That's not safe. That's how they're manufactured, using the plasmid DNA, and then they're supposed to be removed. But if they stay within the product, then we have a big problem if they're able to cross the cell membrane, which the lipid nanoparticles, that's what they allow the product to do. They're designed to allow entry into the cell. And then if they go even deeper into the nucleus, then it can be a huge problem. Now, one thing that I would really like to see them bring up maybe at the next meeting is the cancer data, because the last time I checked, all the current cancer data that from the CDC is actually based on models and not the real data. So the last real data we have is from 2022, and that's not going to accurately reflect what's going on. And I am hearing stories from oncologists I know. One in particular is a good friend of mine who works at MD Anderson. She said she's never seen anything like it. She's seen young people with very advanced cancers, and she's, of course, no one is really openly acknowledging what's happening, but the doctors are, there's buzz going on behind the scenes. So it would be super helpful if the CDC could give us some updated information. So as soon as we have Kevin McKernan come on, we'll talk about that. Then we'll have, after Kevin, we'll have Dr. Toby Rogers. And Dr. Rogers, yeah. Okay, yeah, let's have Dr. Rogers come on. He can tell us about the bombshell news with acetaminophen. And Dr. Rogers, I just know him from X. He's a fellow at Brownstone. He did his honors thesis on autism. He looked at all the studies out there. I believe there are about 1,100 studies on autism. He weeded through them to find out, which ones we can take stock in. It turns out the vast majority of them are confounded because they do not account for vaccination status. So that's a huge one. If they lump everybody together and they don't even ask them, were you vaccinated or were you not vaccinated, then you have no way of sorting out that as a potential risk factor for autism. And he has a Substack, which goes through this in great detail. And I can't remember the name of it, but he can tell us. But welcome, Toby. Can you hear me? I think you might be on mute. I cannot hear you. I see your lips moving. No, I can see your lips moving, but I cannot hear you.
I'm not sure.
I'll keep talking and wait, I heard somebody. Is that you?
We did a test.
Okay, now I can hear you. Perfect.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the show. Sorry about the audio. I'm not sure what it was, but I'm grateful to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to see you. So let's get right to it. What do you think? You think Tylenol? What's your thought on this announcement on Monday with Tylenol?
Yeah, so look, we've had 3 days to digest this information. And so I had some initial thoughts, and now I have 3 layers of thoughts about the press conference on Monday and the new policies that were announced on Monday. So can I just work through them in sort of 3 stages? So the first reaction is that Trump was fantastic at the press conference. Trump made it clear that he sees vaccines as a cause of autism. He described an employee at Trump Tower who he knew personally, whose son regressed into autism after vaccination. And he made it clear that he wants major changes to the childhood vaccine schedule to help stop the autism epidemic. So specifically, he wants 5 things. He wants the hepatitis B vaccine moved to age 12. Currently, it's given on the first day of life, as you know, when the blood-brain barrier is not fully formed. So the current schedule is crazy. And he wants the MMR given as 3 separate shots. Next, he wants only 1 shot per vaccine visit, and he wants all mercury removed from vaccines, and he wants all aluminum removed from vaccines. So that's all perfectly reasonable. He is scientifically correct on every point. And obviously, we would go further, right? We would say no mandates ever, because informed consent requires that any vaccine be freely chosen without any hint of coercion. And of course, we would remove liability protection for vaccines as well. But overall, Trump went off script. He tackled the elephant in the room. He said some big truths that would get anybody else fired. And I think he moved the conversation forward. And I feel like now the onus is on Secretary Kennedy to make those changes via the regulatory process at FDA and CDC. That's all perfectly reasonable. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. But and the last point I would just say is I think Secretary Kennedy should call an emergency meeting of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices and have them pass all 5 major reforms as a package.
Well, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, it's as you know, I'm very frustrated because I thought this COVID shot situation would have been handled by now very swiftly. So you think how realistic is it that, and it was great. Trump went off script and said a lot of things that would normally have not been said, but do you think that things will actually get implemented?
I think this is a long war. I think nobody knows what the future holds. And so we're just trying to use a sports metaphor, move the ball down the field. And this week we moved the ball down the field, not as far as we wanted, but much further than we thought we might. So the point I'm at is to take the wins when they present themselves, and then also to keep our eye on the prize, to keep our eye on the goal, which is to restore liability so that we can take the pharmaceutical industry to court, particularly vaccine makers, to prohibit mandates, to get rid of vaccine schedules. We still have our North Star. We're clear on what we're fighting for. But if we can get small wins, I'll take small wins, and I'll keep pushing for bigger wins. But there's some small wins that I don't want to lose sight of from Monday as well. And let me just highlight them for a moment. So I thought Secretary Kennedy, he's right to discourage use of Tylenol during pregnancy. It's toxic. Nobody should be taking it. And leucovorin, it's going to help a lot of children on the spectrum. It's a form of the vitamin B9, which is folate. It's folinic acid, not folic acid, but folinic acid. And for the first time, we have a treatment with little downside that has a lot of potential for addressing autism symptoms. I'm on some leucovorin groups on Facebook, and a lot of parents are seeing improvements in their children, particularly around speech and the ability to socialize with others. So those are some small wins, but they're significant. Candidly, we had no wins prior to this week. And so these are important wins. And then FDA Commissioner Marty McCary said 4 words at the press conference that nobody else has noted, but I want to highlight here because they change everything. He said this sentence. He said, autism can be prevented. Now, I've worked for 10 years to get that fact into the public consciousness. What Marty McCary was confirming is that autism is caused by toxicants. Now, we have to actually do something about that now, ban and restrict those toxicants. And that's mostly vaccines and about a dozen additional toxicants. But history was made when the FDA commissioner said, for the first time in American history, autism can be prevented. And then the other win I thought from the press conference on Monday was that NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya acknowledged that the surge in autism prevalence could not possibly be from genetic factors alone. And that's also a first. Director Bhattacharya is the first NIH director to recognize that the autism epidemic is toxicogenic, caused by toxicants. So we're in a different space today on Wednesday than we were on Monday and than we've ever been in the history of the movement, because the paradigm is shifting, and Secretary Kennedy, Marty McCary, and Jay Bhattacharya acknowledge some foundational truths that are going to open the door to a whole lot of more reforms down the road.
Well, that's a good positive spin on it. I'm actually glad to hear that, because I sort of felt like, okay, they're just putting all their blame on Tylenol, and but I think you're right. Yeah, it's more significant than most people probably realize. There's been so much buzz today about Tylenol. It seems to be overtaking the conversation. But I think you've really highlighted some important things to take away from that press conference. And yes, it's interesting because Peter Hotez, his big thing is, it's genetics, genetics, genetics. And I skimmed your Substack today about that situation. Tell us real quick about the genetics and why it cannot be genetics.
Yeah, so as you highlighted at the top of this conversation, I did this systematic review on my Substack, and then it was picked up by Brownstone and sent far and wide, where I did a systematic review of 1,000 studies of autism causation. And I worked through different batches of studies. So there's 22 studies that claim that vaccines don't cause autism. None of those studies has a completely unvaccinated control group. So they're not reliable. You can't figure out the causes of autism from those studies. Then there's about 500 studies of genes and autism, genetic studies. And the problem with these studies is there's no such thing as a genetic epidemic. The human genome just doesn't change that fast. Since 1970, the autism rate has increased from 1 in 10,000 children back in 1970 to 1 in 31 children today. Now, if you do the math, that's a 32,158% increase in autism prevalence in the last 50 some years, 55 years. So the human genome just doesn't change that fast. So a genetic study is never going to be able to explain what's happening with the rise in autism. And then there are these epigenetic studies that are looking at the interaction between toxicants in the environment and the human genome. And there's about 500 of those studies as well. And they're somewhat better than the genetic studies. They're better than the vaccine studies. The problem with those studies is that these epigenetic studies that are looking at toxicants in the environment, including Tylenol, by the way, they never control for vaccines as a possible confounder or covariate, and they never look at the interaction effects between vaccines and the toxicants they're studying. And that's by design. So in epidemiology, it is standard practice to ignore vaccines as a possible causal factor. And they do that to save their jobs, and they do that to keep from getting blacklisted, and they do that entirely to keep from angering the pharmaceutical industry. So you have these 500 studies, very good epidemiologists conducting these studies that look at lots of different toxicants, about 12 different classes of toxicants. But they never look at the elephant in the room. They never look at vaccines. They never control for it. They never study it. They never measure it. Sometimes they have the data in their data sets and they ignore it. So those studies are also invalid. They're unreliable. Unfortunately, I like these researchers. I like these studies. You can't rely on them because they left out the factor that might explain everything. And then there's 6 very good vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies that have been conducted over the last couple decades, 2 by Gallagher and Goodman, that show that vaccines, particularly the hepatitis B vaccine, significantly increases autism risk. 3 brilliant studies by Anthony Mawson that show that vaccines significantly increase the risk of autism and other neurodevelopmental disabilities. And then a brilliant study by Hooker and Miller in 2021 that shows that vaccines significantly increase autism risk. So that's the systematic review that I've done, and it's been read widely inside HHS, FDA, NIH, CDC. And look, they know about this problem of confounding and the possibility that vaccines are covariant, and they know that they're not measuring the interaction effect between vaccines and other toxicants, but they are scared to take on the pharmaceutical industry, so they produce studies that are not very reliable.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Well, okay, tell us what is the name of your Substack so people can go find this?
Yeah, so it's tobyrogers.substack.com, and I call it Utopian, which is a play on the word utopian, but uses my name Toby. So it's Utopian, it's tobyrogers.substack.com.
Great. And you are a fantastic follow on X too. You're pretty snarky and funny. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will we'll have you back soon to get an update. And when we come back, we will talk to Kevin McKernan.
Toby Rogers is absolutely 100% one of my favorite follows on X. And yes, he is snarky and he is funny, and so appreciate his optimism after the recent press conference. So thank you to Toby, and of course, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. There is some breaking news. It looks as if, and I just saw this, I don't want to bring it up, but Casey DeSantis is announcing right now that they are going to be studying in the state of Florida using generic drugs like ivermectin in curing cancer. It's a huge, huge deal. And so many people, thank you to Mary Talley Bowden for continuing to keep ivermectin in the fore, but also Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. William Mackis out of Canada, Dr. Merrick, so many amazing doctors out there using ivermectin and very effectively to treat cancer. So that's huge. But before we get to Mary's next interview with the amazing Kevin McKernan, I do want to talk about a groundbreaking study. It's risk stratification for future cardiac arrest after the jab, after the COVID shot. If you've taken the COVID shot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many, and you're still not feeling right, this might be the time for you to listen up. Dr. Peter McCullough highlights in this report an alarming rise in sudden cardiac events among young and previously healthy individuals after the shot. His study found that tiny hidden patches of heart inflammation, often missed by doctors, could silently be building up and leading to sudden heart attacks during exercise or sleep. Absolutely tragic. This is why the wellness company created the 3-in-1 ultimate spike detox. If you haven't yet detoxed from the spike protein, from the shots that you got, whether it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you might want to consider doing this. It was crafted with 100% natural ingredients, specifically designed to help your body clear harmful spike proteins, reduce inflammation, and support heart health. So don't wait until the symptoms strike. Experience the only formula that is approved and used by Dr. McCullough himself. He's a top freedom-fighting doctor. As we know, he risks it all. He's been a regular on the Shannon Joy Show, and he's also been right here on call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. So right now, go to twc.health/Mary. That is twc.health/Mary. Use the code MARY to get 10% off plus free shipping to get started on Ultimate Spike Detox. Remember, you can also use her promo code MARY to get 10% off anything that you use on the Wellness Company website. So we are so thankful for the sponsorship of the Wellness Company. We could not bring this show to you every Wednesday live if it were not for their sponsorship. So make sure that you support this show by using that promo code MARY. why every time you shop at the wellness company. Okay, without further ado, final segment of On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. This is the last you're going to see of me, but we appreciate Mary, and I appreciate all of you. If you're watching right now on Twitter or Facebook or Substack, if you're watching on Rumble right now, give us a thumbs up, comments, questions, help push this out. Such amazing, valuable information. Back to Dr. Mary Talley Bowden.
Thanks, Shannon. And now we have Kevin McKernan, who is a scientist with over 25 years experience in the genomic field. He was part of the Human Genome Project. He's sort of my go-to person, him and Jessica Rose as well, when it comes to the genetic factors contributing to these COVID shots. At this ACIP meeting last week, there were some concerns brought up to Pfizer and Moderna concerning the DNA contamination that has been found. And I believe at this point there are 10 studies showing contamination of DNA. And they're allowed a certain amount of DNA contamination. And this is left over from the manufacturing process. So they use DNA, they use plasmid DNA to make the product, but it's supposed to be eliminated before it goes into people's bodies. But what happens, or seems to have happened, is that Pfizer and Moderna are telling the FDA everything's great, and the FDA is not double checking to make sure that they're actually doing what they're saying they're doing, because independent researchers are looking at vials and they're finding levels that far exceed the upper limit allowed for these sorts of products. And so Kevin's going to tell us sort of what his research has shown, how concerned we should be about what the independent researchers have found. If you looked on my X feed, I did post the direct interaction between it was Dr. Kirk Milhone, who is a like-minded pediatric cardiologist who has been, he's a friend of mine, and I trust him very much. I thought he was one of the top contenders for Surgeon General, actually. He really checks all the boxes. But I'm so glad to see he's on this committee, this ACIP committee, and he was the one that fired the questions at the FDA. And it's pretty funny because the FDA stammers. You can tell it's uncomfortable for them to answer. They basically said that there's some proprietary information that they're not allowed to disclose. They say that everything according to Pfizer and Moderna, the levels are fine. But of course, we have independent researchers who are saying otherwise. And as I said in the earlier segment, the problem with the DNA is the fact that it's protected by the lipid nanoparticle. So normally, if you just injected random DNA into your body would immediately destroy it and eliminate it. But when it's protected by the lipid nanoparticle, then it can escape that destruction, and it can enter the cells. It can go into the cytoplasm. It can actually even enter into the nucleus. And then there's a concern that it could integrate into the DNA via either plasmid DNAs or reverse transcription. And then that's very problematic. It's been shown to have SV40. SV40 is an oncogenic gene, that oncogenic meaning tumor enhancing. And that is also highly problematic and highly concerning. So it's just, where do we go from here? You would think that based on the meeting from last week, that the FDA would say, hey, this is concerning enough that maybe we need to dive into this deeper before we inject more people with this product, especially children and pregnant women. They did remove the blanket recommendation. Now they're saying it has to be between a patient and their physician, which is, yes, a step in the right direction. but these products should have been pulled off the market a long time ago. 10% of healthcare workers, and this came out during the meeting as well, the CDC actually presented this data. They said that only 10% of healthcare workers received the latest version of the COVID shot. I mean, that's really all you need to know, because this was when the CDC was recommending that everybody continue to get an annual booster. And the vast majority of people in the medical field were completely ignoring, if not defying, the CDC and not. Okay. So, Kevin, if you're there, we are going to love to talk to you.
I'm here. There we go.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. How's it going?
Excellent. Great.
Thank
great.
you for
I'm
your
glad you're.
patience.
No problem. And thank you for having those other great guests. I'm glad you had Toby on, because he's hit on a really important point regarding the genetics of autism. I actually worked in that field sequencing autistic children for 5 years, and he's right on the money. There's not a genetic epidemic. There's just predispositions to people who do not handle reactive oxygen species well, and this gets exacerbated by toxicants like vaccines and Tylenol.
Right. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the press conference before we dive into ACIP?
Well, the press conference was. I understand both points here. Yes, it does seem like a bit of a sacrificial lamb. They're going to throw Tylenol under the bus, but it is definitely a toxicant that should not be given to pregnant women. And I've always told my family never touch that stuff. Tylenol is actually a prodrug. It makes two compounds when it gets into your body. It makes something called AM404, which is actually a mimetic of anandamide, which is an endocannabinoid. And that's where the analgesia comes into play. And then it also makes NAPQI, which is a liver toxicant that ends up destroying the glutathione pathway. And this is particularly damaging for people who have MTHFR mutations. There's a lot of people in the autism field will track MTHFR. This is the methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase pathway. This is why there's all this discussion about folate and folinic acid and methylfolate right now. But that liver toxin basically destroys your body's ability to deal with reactive oxygen species, which can lead to mitochondrial damage. And vaccines greatly trigger that pathway. And I think it also ties into this DNA story, because when you are injecting people with DNA that goes into the cytosol, as opposed to getting destroyed, as you mentioned, by injecting it naked into your arm. When it gets into the cytosol, it triggers a very similar pathway known as the CGAS sting pathway. This is a stimulator of interferon genes. Interferon genes are involved in this whole reactive oxygen species management. So as we are injecting patients, whether these DNAs integrate or not, they are going to trigger the CGAS sting pathway and exacerbate that whole pathway. So if you pile on Tylenol and vaccines and you have an MTHFR mutation, all of these things will play into making the problem far, far worse. I think this is why people see some genetic connections in autism, is because there are people out there that have deficiencies in those pathways. And so we see the problem in the people that have predispositions, but it's not a novel genetic entity. It's not something that expanded in the human genome through selection. This is something that's always been there, and we've just added on more toxicant load.
That's very interesting. So do you think that we should have a genetic, like a newborn screening test to see if children have this deficiency?
Well, that might certainly be another way for exemptions. I think we should pull away, all the way back. We have to first figure out these vaccines even work before we start making genetic tests to get people out of them. Right? I'm of all the work that's come out at that ACIP meeting and at Senator Ron Johnson's meeting implies that there's really not good evidence from clinical trials where they've done vax versus unvax to know that we're actually making a difference with these things. Yeah, sure, you can go down the genetic road, but I feel like that's another Band-Aid on top of removing Tylenol. And certainly I think people should learn about their MTHFR genetics, because that may be playing a role in, even if they're unvaccinated, they could be having other toxicants that are driving adverse events. So that can be helpful for a lot of nutraceutical guidance, if you will. But the DNA story is, I think, particularly interesting in that, one, it's evidence that there's no quality control in the vaccine pipeline. Probably never was
Right.
once they had the liability waivers. And it's evidence of fraud because they hid these sequences from the regulators. And normally when regulators find that type of omission, they act. And instead they're
Right.
defending it. So that's a sign of maybe racketeering or other types of collusion that are going on that they're not willing to step up. Now, I'll grant, like Tracy's new there. So Tracy was the person from the FDA. I think you might know Tracy. She's been on Jay Bhattacharya's podcast a few times. And so she's new there. She's inherited this problem and is now,
Right.
claiming she's not going to ignore it. She's taking it very, very seriously. And I trust that she will because she's been actively questioning me even before she was in the FDA about this. She was concerned about it. So I think there's now new leadership there that will finally look at this, but they can't just be taking the numbers from the pharmaceutical industry as gospel because they were just lied to. So there's no reason why there wouldn't be a second lie present in their data if they, were hiding data from the FDA. So for those not familiar, the SV40 region in the Pfizer plasmid was hidden. That was only discovered when we sequenced it. And as you mentioned, that's a gene therapy tool. And gene therapies need to go through genotoxicity studies, which these vaccines skipped because they're not really vaccines. They're actually gene therapies, that they got them registered differently, even though the SEC filing at Moderna claims that they are gene therapies. So that allowed them to evade having to worry about DNA contamination. And now they're trying to act as if it's not there or it's too low to matter. Yet they won't share their protocols for how they're measuring it, and their EMA documents are loaded with concerns in the EMA about that process being very variable, and they never really got it under control.
What is EMA?
Oh, sorry, that's the FDA in Europe, the European Medicines Agency. So there's a Pfizer leak that occurred where all their EMA docs went live, and we were able to comb through those. We have them for Pfizer, we don't have them for Moderna. And those demonstrated that they were having DNA contamination problems really early on, and they never really resolved it. And they also made a switch in their manufacturing process that made this worse. So they ran the 44,000 person trial on PCR-generated material, which omits the SV40 regions. And then after they got approval, they switched to a manufacturing process that left SV40 in, using plasmids that come out of E. coli. And that plasmid DNA is particularly inflammatory because E. coli tends to methylate its DNA differently. It methylates it with what's known as DAM and DCM methylation. So it methylates some of the A's in a wherever you see GATC, it methylates that A, and then also methylates anything that's a CC, T or A, and a GG signal, methylates the C in that context. That's different than human methylation. So when your cells see that, they assume sepsis is going on, and it triggers this stimulation of interferon genes, which creates a big inflammatory cascade, which creates reactive oxygen species and damages people that are using Tylenol or have MTHFR mutations. So this can lead to cancer. Even if it doesn't integrate, it can lead to cancer. And I think that's a really important message because the pharmaceutical industry keeps trying to point to if you can't show integration, it doesn't matter. And that's like a limited hangout. That's a head fake. It might integrate, but they're doing that because it's very hard to prove integration. Once you want to prove integration, you have to sequence people's entire human genome very, very deeply. And once you do that, you're stepping into IRB territory. You need CLIA laboratories to do this. You need very expensive sequencing to do it. And you have to concern yourself with incidental findings. So if I were to sequence your genome and I ran across a BRCA mutation or an ApoE mutation that can imply, breast cancer risk and Alzheimer's risk, I'd be obligated to sit you down with a genetic counselor and explain that to you, unless I got a consent for you to not have that disclosed in the process of sequencing. So the process of finding integration involves all types of regulatory red tape, which is why they're pointing the finger that direction. But the real crime is committed once this DNA gets into the cytosol. That triggers the CS pathway that can lead to oncogenesis and all types of interferon responses.
Yeah, one other thing they said is that the way the measurements were done by the independent researchers was faulty because they were not weeding out the RNA. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's really funny they said that because that's the last two papers that have come out on this directly address that. So Ulrike Kammerer's paper used RNase A, which is an enzyme that erases the RNA before measuring it. Our paper did the same thing. In a prior paper from Bridget Koenig, didn't use RNase A, but did go through some effort to quantitate how much crosstalk there was to try and address that, because the manufacturers have some specs on how much the crosstalk there is. That's a little bit of an oxymoron for them, because they're basically trying to say that you can't use fluorometry to measure the DNA, but we're going to use it to measure the RNA. So the dose that you're given is measured from fluorometry. They put in a dye known as ribogreen, which actually has more crosstalk with DNA than the dye that we use to measure the DNA has with RNA. It's almost 50-fold worse. What they're using to measure the RNA, like half that signal comes from DNA. What we're using to measure the DNA, there's about a 1% crosstalk with RNA, and that was what everyone was critiquing our preprint over. So we went through and put in RNase A, erased all the RNA, and the numbers come down, but they're still like 10 to 100-fold over the limit, depending on which method you use. So the crosstalk thing isn't an issue. That's another one of their smoke grenades that they threw into the audience. And I know the people on the ACIP committee, and they're aware that that's a smoke grenade. They've used those dyes. This is not, you cannot pull the wool over the eyes of the people they pulled in there. They've all worked with these methods before. So I don't know where that's going to lead, other than I think the FDA is going to have to repeat this. And oddly enough, the FDA did have some high school students in their White Oak facility repeat this, and they found it. High school students can find this. This is not not bleeding edge rocket science by any means. It's a $5,000 fluorometer. You need to measure this. This DNA sequencers we're using are like $5,000 as well. I mean, this plugs to USB stick. This does not require a tremendous amount of capital equipment to pick up and measure these things, which does make you question what are these liability waivers doing? If they can't do as much as order $10,000 worth of equipment to check these lots that are going into 5 billion people, they have no care about the quality control. And that's why I would say no, pull back all the vaccines before you institute genetic screening, because that's just I think kicking the can down the road.
Well, I agree, but yes, I'm just astounded that the FDA continues to allow these products to be injected into the public, particularly children and pregnant women. One last question. Did you watch their answer to the distribution and Dr. Malone questioning them about that, and thoughts on that, what their excuses are?
So, yeah, that is, I really wish they would call up John Bodwin, who would show them where all the adverse events are actually happening. I mean, cancer is there, and he can see some cancer signal, but it's not the biggest signal. Myocarditis is probably 1/100th of the signal he has for acute kidney injury. All right, and I think his data is the most rock solid data I think out there, because his death records that you can then use to de-identify VAERS, and you can figure out, you can see that 80% of the deaths that they're recording as COVID had a shot a couple days ago, and so there's massive fraud in the death records as to what people are dying from. And there's just so much information context in this data that would help them come to these conclusions. And he has these for multiple states. So the biodistribution studies, yeah, they're using techniques there like a luciferase assay, which isn't even done on the messenger RNA they're injecting on. It's some other GFP-based or some other luciferase-based mRNA. It doesn't have methylpseudouridine in it, so it doesn't give you a good understanding of how long that signal should last, because we know those RNAs don't decay fast enough. They really should be using radioisotopes and maybe dissection to really get to the bottom of this. But they cut off most of those biodistribution studies at like 48 hours. So they still had signals rising in the ovaries and other tissues when they stopped measuring it. So I think if they measured that out for several weeks, they probably see something that lines up more with John's data, where there is problems in the kidneys, there's a lot of thrombo embolisms and strokes and thrombotic issues that are going on in his data. So that may in fact be, there may be a role in the DNA playing in that. I mean, we know. So to bring this full circle to ivermectin, so one of the issues with the DNA in SV40 is that it has a nuclear targeting sequence. That nuclear targeting sequence gets into the nucleus through a receptor known as important alpha, which is interestingly enough blocked by ivermectin. The other drug that people are using in this field right now are derivatives of fenben, and those are known to increase the expression of p53. This SV40 promoter is known to bind P53, which in my mind is a very bad sign. Anything that binds P53 means that that gene has decoys to deal with. It's not dealing with fixing your genome. It's getting clogged up with all these decoy SV40 promoters. There is some mechanism here that implies the ivermectin fenben approach has some merit, and that should be looked into because it would block this particular issue. But the second issue with the protein in here, the spike protein itself, Wafik El-Diari, who's on the ACIP committee, has published that protein itself will downregulate P53. And it's amyloidogenic, although he didn't publish on the amyloid nature of it. Others have. And that amyloidogenic nature means that it's like a prion. It creates a bit of a protein misfolding cascade that can be responsible for all of this fibrin clotting we see. And I think that's might be what's, you're getting these microclots in the blood that probably hit the kidneys, and maybe that's where the injury is coming from. But that's an area that I think they need to go deeper on because there is a lot of evidence. Jordan Vaughn's been doing great work on this, as has the Patterson lab. There is something going on in the clotting cascade that I can't explain from the DNA contamination alone. So if they clean up all this DNA, they're not out of the woods. This is just a sign that they've been very sloppy, and they left gene therapy components in there that have ties to cancer, and they hid that from regulators. So it's a major problem for fraud and maybe reversing the PrEP Act, but I don't think it's responsible for all the problems that you guys are seeing in the field. There's just too many that I can't tie to it.
Well said. Well, thanks so much, Kevin, for joining us. Where can people find you? I know you have a Substack, and I follow you on X, and you're a great follow. But what's the name of your Substack?
The Substack is anandamide, which is interestingly the compound that Tylenol is trying to mimik, and that's actually related to a lot of physicians that are trying to treat patients, autism patients with cannabinoids. The name of the Substack is actually napetolactone, which is another compound of interest of mine that's involved in catnip. But that Substack has all of this history on it, and we also run a medical cannabis conference called CanMed every year. It's going to be in Lake Tahoe this year in June. So if people want to learn about Tylenol and the endocannabinoid system, which is playing a role in this whole cascade, there are great physicians down there that understand this field and have been treating autistic patients for decades using things that are really not they've been horse pasted, much like ivermectin. Let's put it that way.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to that. I went to Tahoe this past summer, and I loved it. So you're going to have to remind me when it comes on.
Well, bring me up. I'd love for you to tell your story because you're fighting the same fight these people have been fighting for 20 years on cannabinoids. It's a little bit more complicated in their space because there is some recreational abuse that goes on in that field. But there's many. It's a very interesting field. It's not taught in medical school, but it's like the most prevalent GPCR receptor in our brain. And it's not taught because pharma tends to select what gets taught, and it's usually their pathways and their drugs. But those physicians had the same battle trying to go state by state to get medical access, and they may have a few tricks up their sleeve you guys can share.
Well, I'm going to have you back on when we have more time and we can dive into that topic. So thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Join us at 12 o'clock. I am on with Shannon Joy from 12 to 12:30 and then 12:30 to 1:30 on call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. Thank you.